An unmarked white envelope addressed to me. That's where it all began. I'm Sarah, nearing 60. 15 years ago, I divorced my husband after discovering his affair. And since then, I've been living on my own. For the past year, I've been staying with my second son and his girlfriend, Daisy. My eldest son, Tom, now 35, lives in an apartment near his workplace. Life was quiet and routine with me working part-time, until the day this mysterious envelope arrived. It was crudely marked with my name and address with no indication of a sender. Inside was a hotel bill. What's this? I wondered aloud. Upon closer inspection, I realized the bill wasn't addressed to me but to my eldest son, Tom. A detailed wedding and reception expenses dated about 2 weeks ago. What could this mean? Did Tom get married? Tom had a girlfriend I met once a few months back, but there was no mention of marriage at the time. I didn't have the best impression of her. Her name was Michelle, if I recall correctly. She barely made eye contact and seemed constantly uncomfortable, punctuating her speech with and oh as if something was bothering her. Could it be that Tom actually married her? I quickly called Tom, but he didn't answer, likely because he was at work. I decided to leave a message on the landline at the apartment where Tom lived, and to my surprise, a woman picked up. It was Michelle. When she realized it was me, she spoke with irritation. This is why I told Tom we should get rid of this landline. What does this mean? Did you two get married? Are you living together? I fired off a series of questions. Michelle responded in a flat, indifferent tone. Yeah, we got married. We're living together now. So what? So what? I received a bill from the hotel. I didn't hear anything about a wedding. Oh, that arrived already? I sent it because I thought you'd pay, Michelle replied casually. We picked a venue where we could pay later. We covered the deposit, but we figured you should take care of the rest. What? They had a wedding without even inviting me, and now they expect me to pay? I was completely at a loss for words. Michelle, sounding irritated but firm, said, Tom was the one who insisted on marrying me. I found the whole mother-in-law thing too bothersome and declined many times. So naturally, you should be the one to pay. If you refuse, you realize Tom will end up buried in debt? Her cold tone snapped me back to reality. What does Tom think about all this? He says it's fine, of course. Oh, and don't bother trying to contact him. I made sure your number is blocked. So that's why I couldn't reach him earlier. Yes, and while we're at it, other than for weddings, funerals, and the like, please don't contact us at all. And even for those, we don't want anything that costs money. Wait, just hold on a minute. Why are you avoiding me so much? It's obvious, isn't it? A mother-in-law is nothing but a nuisance. Besides, you're broke after your divorce, right? We can't have you begging us for money. I felt a surge of anger as I retorted, if you think I'm so poor, why are you sending me this bill? That's a separate issue. Please make sure to pay it. With that, Michelle hung up abruptly. I stood there holding the receiver, completely stunned. Mom, my second son, Jack's voice brought me back to reality. It felt like hours had passed since that phone call, and I was standing alone in a dark room. Tears overflowed as I explained everything to Jack. He hadn't heard anything about Tom's marriage and was now fuming with anger. It's unbelievable. That wife of his, she seems like trouble, doesn't she? I thought she might be a good match for my brother, but now. That's right, Tom, who was spoiled by my late mother-in-law, has looked down on me since he was a child. By middle school, he was calling me old hag and worthless. He, along with my mother-in-law and ex-husband, treated me terribly. Jack was the one who always stood up for me. After my divorce, I lived alone for a long time. But my kind son, worried I might be lonely, invited me to move in with him and his girlfriend, Daisy. What should I do about this bill? It's over $20,000. I could use the alimony for my ex-husband to pay it, but I honestly don't want to touch that money. I was planning to save it for your and Daisy's wedding, or for when you have kids. Both you and Daisy have always been so kind to me, so I decided to use all the alimony and property settlement money, which my stingy ex-husband scrimped and saved, for the two of you. Then my son said, Mom, that money is yours. You don't have to use it for us, and it's completely unreasonable to use it for my brother. He took the bill from me. I'll get rid of this at work. Remember what my brother has done to you. You absolutely must not pay this. Even though my eldest son had treated me poorly, I still felt a sense of responsibility as his mother. If I kept the bill, I might end up paying it. Jack understood that, and I felt relieved. 2 weeks later, Michelle called me. Hey, Why haven't you paid yet? The venue contacted me because the payment deadline has passed. I've discussed it with my second son, and we decided there's no need to pay. Besides, can't you cover it with the cash gifts from the wedding? I managed to voice my stance, though my heart raced with anxiety. Michelle's response was immediate and furious. We've moved, and we've already spent all the cash gifts. What are you going to do about this? What? You moved? Where to? None of your business. Just shut up. It was clear that Michelle wanted nothing to do with me. Realizing this, I steeled myself and proposed, all right, I'll offer you $10,000. In return, we part ways completely, no contact, not even for weddings or funerals. We act as if the other person does not exist. What do you think? But Michelle wasn't satisfied. $10,000 isn't enough. I need at least $20,000. What are you thinking? You didn't invite me to the wedding, you didn't tell me where you moved, and now you're asking for $20,000? I don't care. You probably have about 20 years left to live anyway. We plan to live twice as long as you, so I might as well take all your money while I can. That's just cruel, I said, struggling to keep my composure. Well, one way or another, we're going to get that $20,000 from you. Once you pay, we'll cut ties as you requested. I was eager to distance myself from Michelle, so I reluctantly agreed to her terms. Jack would probably be furious if he found out, but I wanted to avoid any more trouble from Tom and his wife. A year later, Jack married Daisy. As they were preparing to set up their new home, they asked me to move in with them, even though I had planned to live alone. In addition to giving them a wedding gift, I prepaid 2 years' rent for their new place and contributed to their mortgage. Then Michelle called again. I heard Tom's brother and his wife are building a house. You helped them, didn't you? Because of you, Tom is working 2 jobs and is exhausted. And you only gave us $20,000, Michelle said. It was clear she had heard about our new living arrangements somehow. I was taken aback. But you agreed to the terms back then. There's nothing I can do about it now. Shut up. We're having a baby. What are you going to do about that? Oh, really? Congratulations. But remember, we agreed to cut all ties, so I'm not giving you a penny. Despite her attempts to pressure me, I remained firm. You think you can use a grandchild as a bargaining chip. Even if your baby is born, you won't be seeing them. You'll regret it. With that, Michelle hung up. It seemed she believed a grandchild could control a mother-in-law. While I'd love to have a grandchild, I'm already expecting one. Actually twins, a boy and a girl. Daisy is 8 months pregnant. Tom's child doesn't interest me at all. 6 months later, Daisy gave birth to the twins, and I was joyfully and busily caring for them. Then I received an email from Tom with a photo attached. It showed a beautiful baby with Michelle and Tom. Since we had already cut ties, it was none of my business. When I continued to ignore it, Michelle called me, her frustration evident in her voice. Did you see the picture? Isn't it incredibly cute? Yes, it is. So, what do you want? Don't speak like that. I went out of my way to show you your grandchild, your eldest grandson. You could at least send a congratulatory gift. What? I thought we agreed to no contact except for weddings, funerals, and such. Yes, that was the agreement, but normally a grandparent would send a congratulatory gift or something. I wasn't surprised by her approach. No, I'm sticking to the agreement, Michelle. Realizing it was pointless to argue further, Michelle handed the phone to Tom. That's your deal with Michelle, not mine. Send me the celebratory money. Tom, ever skilled at twisting logic, said, It's your eldest grandson, you know. Don't you think you should be looking out for him? According to Tom, how they treat their grandchild will somehow influence how I'm treated in my old age. I really don't need you to worry about my old age, I replied. Huh? You think you can rely on Jack? With 2 kids of his own, do you really believe he can take care of you when you're older? I'm not planning to rely on Jack and his family. So what's your plan? I know you didn't get much from Dad's alimony. Wouldn't it be better to stay on good terms with us now? Tom said triumphantly. To that, I answered, As I've said, I'll be fine. I've been contributing to a personal pension plan since I was single. It's an old policy with good rates, and I'll be receiving about $800 a month starting this year. Additionally, my work history qualifies me for a government pension of around $800 as well. I can manage comfortably on both. Tom seemed stunned by my response. After a moment of stunned silence, he stammered, But that's only enough if nothing goes wrong. When you get older and your health declines, you'll end up coming to us for help. Chuckling, I replied, "Don't worry, I canceled the life insurance policy where you were the beneficiary. I had originally taken out life insurance policies for both Tom and Jack when they were born, with them each as beneficiaries. I canceled Tom's to cover the $20,000 bill. There's plenty of money from the cancellation, so you needn't worry." Canceled. Are you serious? Yes, indeed. It's a shame, really. If I hadn't canceled it, you would have received about $100,000 when I pass away. No way. If you're looking to blame someone, point the finger at Michelle. She was the one who insisted on getting the $20,000 from me by any means necessary. The cancellation refund was only about $50,000, so I had around $30,000 left. Less than what might shock Tom, but I wasn't obligated to disclose the exact amount. Satisfied with Tom's stunned silence, I hung up the phone. Shortly after, it appeared Tom and Michelle had a massive argument. There's talk of divorce, but discussions about alimony and child support are stalled, leaving them living separately within the same house. It's like watching the downfall of someone obsessed with money. Meanwhile, I've taken up part-time work as a cleaner to ensure I'm not a financial burden on Jack and his family during my retirement. Warmly welcomed by my son and his wife, and with the joy of 2 grandchildren, I'm truly content now.
I never thought I'd be the one paying for my parents' 30th wedding anniversary party. Then again, I never thought I'd end up destroying it either. My name is Eloise, and I've always been my family's ATM wrapped in a disappointment. You know that feeling when your phone rings and your stomach drops? That's how I feel every time I see mom or dad flash across my screen. It's never, "How are you?" It's always, "We need." The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was finishing up designs for a major client. Dad's voice crackled through the speaker, uncharacteristically soft. "Princess, your mother's heartbroken. We wanted to do something special for our anniversary, but with the market being what it is." I muted my microphone and let out a long breath. Here it comes. "We thought maybe you could help since you're doing so well with your little, what do you call it, freelancing thing?" I unmuted. "It's a design agency, Dad. I own my own business." "Right, right. Your sister Trinity just bought their second vacation home, you know. But this isn't about that. Your mother really deserves something special." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. "How much are you thinking?" "Oh, nothing extravagant. Maybe 8, 10,000. We found this beautiful venue." I nearly choked on my coffee. $10,000? "Well, Princess, if you can't manage it," his voice took on that familiar, disappointed tone, "we'll just have to do something small. Your mother will understand. She always does." The guilt settled in my stomach like lead. I thought about all the times Mom had understood: my high school graduation party canceled because Trinity needed new furniture, my college acceptance celebration downsized to pizza because Dad had investments to consider. "I'll handle it," I heard myself say. "That's my girl. I'll have Trinity send you the venue details. She's got excellent taste, you know." Of course she does. Trinity, the golden child. Trinity, who somehow never has to pay for anything despite her husband's real estate empire. The next few weeks became a blur of vendor calls and budget adjustments. Every time I thought we'd finalize something, Trinity would call. "The flowers you picked are so basic," she said one afternoon. "Mom deserves better than carnations. I found these gorgeous imported roses." "The roses are triple the price." "God, Eloise, it's Mom and Dad's 30th. Don't be so cheap." Rich, coming from someone who hadn't contributed a dime. The final blow came yesterday. I was at my favorite coffee shop with my best friend Lindsay when the email arrived. The final invoice, 18,437 lire and 50 dollars. "Holy shit," Lindsay whispered, peering at my screen. "That's insane. Tell them no." I already had my banking app open. "They're my parents. They're taking advantage of you again." I completed the transfer, feeling numb. "It's fine. It's just money." "Just money?" "Eloise, that's more than most people spend on their own wedding." My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Trinity showed me the final plans. We had to make some last minute upgrades. You understand, right?" No, thank you. No acknowledgement of the amount. Just another assumption that Eloise would handle it. You know what the worst part is? I said to Lindsay, setting my phone face down. They'll probably spend the whole party talking about how successful Trinity is while treating me like their quirky disappointment who never quite got her life together. Lindsay reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then why do it? I stared at my phone, watching as another text came in, Trinity this time, demanding changes to the menu. Something inside me shifted, like a gear finally clicking into place after years of grinding. You're right, I said slowly. Why am I doing this? Eloise, no, really, why am I paying nearly $20,000 to throw a party where I'll be treated like an embarrassment? I picked up my phone and opened my email. The event manager's contact information stared back at me. Royal Washington, professional, discreet, and most importantly, contractually obligated to follow the instructions of the person who signed the checks. What are you thinking? Lindsay asked, recognition dawning in her eyes. I smiled for what felt like the first time in weeks. I'm thinking that if I'm paying for this party, maybe it's time I got my money's worth. The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom sparkled like a champagne bubble, all crystal and gold, exactly as Trinity had envisioned. I arrived early, smoothing down my simple black dress, expensive but understated. The event manager, Royal, greeted me with a professional nod. Everything's set up according to specifications, Ms. Eloise. I watched the staff arrange elaborate centerpieces. And the payment processing? All vendors are clear on protocol. Nothing moves without your direct approval. Perfect. I tucked that information away like a loaded gun. The guests started arriving at 6. I stood near the entrance, accepting hugs from relatives I barely knew. Mom swept in wearing a designer gown that probably cost more than my first car. She air kissed my cheek. Oh, honey, you went with black? It's not a funeral. You look beautiful, Mom. She was already scanning the room. Have you seen your sister? Trinity said she had a surprise. As if summoned, Trinity and her husband Jasper made their entrance. She wore red because, of course, she did. Heads turned. Mom rushed over, leaving me mid sentence. There's my successful girl, Dad boomed, embracing Trinity. And Jasper, my boy, heard about that new development deal. Brilliant. I sipped my wine and watched the show. Trinity held court, describing their recent vacation in Bali. Jasper caught my eye and smirked. Eloise, he called out. Still doing that? What is it, graphic design thing? I own an agency. Right, right, making little logos and such. You know, if you ever want a real job, I could use someone to handle our social media. Trinity laughed. Oh, honey, Eloise isn't corporate material. She's our free spirit. More relatives clustered around them. I drifted toward the bar, where my cousin Genesis gave me a sympathetic look. They're really something, aren't they? They're really something, I agreed, ordering another wine. Mom appeared beside me, her smile tight. Eloise, dear, the appetizers seem a bit sparse. Didn't we discuss having more variety? We did. Then you upgraded the flowers. Well, it's just that everyone's commenting on how lovely Trinity's choices are. The roses really make the room. Trinity's choices, I repeated. Interesting, since I paid for everything. Mom's face darkened. You shouldn't expect gratitude for just doing what any daughter should. The words hit like a slap. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder of receipts, setting it deliberately next to my wine glass. Every invoice, every upgrade, every last minute addition, all with my name on them. What's that? Mom asked. Insurance. She frowned. Don't be dramatic, Eloise. It's not attractive. I watched her walk away, joining Dad as he regaled someone with stories about Trinity's childhood achievements. My phone buzzed, a text from Lindsay. How's it going? I typed back. They haven't even acknowledged I paid for it. Those ungrateful what or want me to crash it? Despite everything, I smiled. Then I saw Jasper pointing at me, whispering something that made Trinity laugh. My smile faded. The event manager passed by, checking on details. I caught his arm. Royal? Yes, Miss Eloise. If I need things to end prematurely, how fast can you make that happen? He raised an eyebrow, professional mask never slipping. Everything here operates at your discretion. One word from you, and we can shut it down in minutes. I nodded slowly, watching my father raise his glass for a toast. He was going to speak soon. I knew that look, the one that usually preceded his most cutting jokes. Good to know, I said. Royal studied me carefully. Should I put the staff on standby? Through the crowd, I could see Trinity adjusting Mom's hair, both of them laughing. Dad was gathering everyone's attention, that familiar, cruel twinkle in his eye as he glanced my way. The folder of receipts felt heavy beside my hand. $18,000 of proof that I wasn't the failure they painted me as. $18,000 of ammunition. Yes, I said quietly. I think it's time we gave them a party they'll never forget. Royal nodded once and disappeared into the crowd. I picked up my wine glass and the folder, moving closer to hear Dad's speech. After all, if you're going to burn bridges, you might as well light the match at exactly the right moment. The band played softly as Dad tapped his glass with a spoon. The crystal rang out, and conversations died down. I positioned myself near the back, folder clutched in one hand, wine in the other. Friends. Family. Dad began, his voice carrying that practiced charm he used to close business deals. 30 years ago, I married the most beautiful woman in the room. Appreciative chuckles rippled through the crowd. Mom beamed. And somehow, she's still the most beautiful woman in the room. He paused for effect. Well, tied with our daughter Trinity. Trinity preened, smoothing her red dress. Jasper wrapped an arm around her waist. You know, when Trinity was born, I knew she was destined for greatness. Top of her class, married to a brilliant businessman, giving us the grandchildren we always dreamed of. My phone buzzed. Lindsay again. You okay? They don't deserve any of this. I didn't respond. Dad was building to something. I could feel it. And then there's our youngest, he said, turning toward me. The crowd followed his gaze. Our little bohemian free spirit over there in the corner. I lifted my glass in mock salute. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Not quite what we hoped for, career wise? He chuckled. Our biggest regret, honestly, but what can you do? Laughter erupted. Trinity's carried above the rest, sharp and cruel. Mom clinked her glass with Dad's, unbothered by his words. The room spun slightly. Biggest regret. The words echoed in my head, mixing with every other dismissive comment, every comparison to Trinity, every moment they'd made me feel small. Still, Dad continued, at least she's good for funding a party. More laughter. Jasper actually slapped his knee. I set down my wine glass with a sharp click. The folder felt heavy in my hands. $18,000 of receipts. $18,000 of their true colors, printed in black and white. Thank you all for coming, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. Heads turned, surprised to hear me speak. Eloise, Mom warned, but I was already walking toward Royal, who stood ready by the service entrance. Is everything prepared? I asked quietly. He nodded. On your word. Sweetheart, Dad called out. Don't interrupt. I'm not finished. Actually, I said, turning to face the crowd, you are. I handed Royal the folder. He opened it, reviewed the contents with practiced efficiency, and spoke into his earpiece. Kill the music! The band stopped mid-song. The sudden silence was deafening. What's happening? Trinity demanded. The party's barely started. I smiled, feeling oddly calm. No, the party's over. Actually, it was over the moment Dad called me his biggest regret. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Mom said. He was joking. Funny. I'm not laughing. I turned to Royal. Proceed. He nodded again. Waiters began removing plates from tables. The bar shutters closed with a decisive click. You can't do this? Trinity shrieked. Actually, I can. You see, while you were taking credit for choosing the flowers, and Dad was making jokes about my career, and Mom was pretending this whole event materialized out of thin air, I was the one paying for everything. The crowd murmured. Some guests started gathering their belongings, sensing drama. Every invoice, every upgrade, every last minute addition Trinity demanded, it all goes through me, and I'm done funding my own humiliation. Dad's face turned red. Now listen here. No, you listen. For $18,000, I bought myself the right to finally be heard. Movement at the entrance caught my attention. An elderly woman entered, supported by Genesis, my grandmother Sierra, who I hadn't seen in years. Interesting timing, she said, surveying the chaos. Just like the baby shower they canceled when Eloise was born. Mom went pale. Mother, you weren't invited. No, Sierra said sharply. I never am. But I think it's time we discussed why, don't you? The room fell silent. Even Trinity stopped mid protest. What is she talking about? I asked, but I could see the answer in Mom's face, in the way Dad suddenly couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Sierra walked toward me, her cane tapping against the marble floor. There are some stories they never told you, dear, about why you were always the regret. I looked at my parents, these people who had shaped my life with their disapproval and demands. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes. Well, I said, since I paid for the venue, I think we have time for a story. You were 16, Sierra began, when you asked me why your mother never looked at your childhood photos. The memory hit like lightning, Dad's voice echoing through our old house. She's just not trying hard enough. Trinity never gave us these problems. Mother, don't, Mom warned, but Sierra continued. I remember the day you were born. Your mother wouldn't hold you. Trinity stepped forward. This isn't appropriate. Quiet, I snapped. For once in your life, Trinity, just be quiet. The remaining guests huddled near the walls, watching the scene unfold like a theater production. Royal directed his staff to continue clearing tables, the quiet clink of dishes punctuating the tension. You were born during what your parents call their rough patch, Sierra said. But it wasn't financial trouble that made it rough. Dad moved toward Mom, protective. Lucille, we should go. Tell her, Sierra demanded, or I will. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her champagne glass. It was a difficult time. Because Dad was sleeping with his secretary? Sierra's voice cut through the room like a blade. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Trinity's mouth fell open. You were pregnant with me, I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. When he had the affair. I threatened to cut your mother out of my will if she didn't stop punishing you for his sins, Sierra continued. But she found other ways, didn't she? The memories cascaded. My 10th birthday party, canceled because I was too difficult. My art school acceptance letter met with cold silence while Trinity's business school admission warranted a family vacation. Every achievement diminished, every milestone overshadowed. You were supposed to be our fresh start, Mom whispered, but every time I looked at you, I remembered. Stop, Dad interrupted. This is ancient history. Ancient? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You called me your biggest regret 10 minutes ago. Royal appeared at my elbow. Miss Eloise, the vendors are asking about payment for continued service. Let me handle it, Jasper said, reaching for his wallet. We can salvage this. No, I turned to Royal. Show them the contracts. Everything stops now. You can't do this. Trinity's voice rose to a shriek. This is Mom and Dad's anniversary. An anniversary funded by their biggest regret. I faced my parents. How does it feel to have your perfect night ruined by something beyond your control? Mom stepped toward me. Eloise, please, please what? Please keep quiet. Please keep paying. Please keep pretending I deserve this treatment because of when I was born? The band began packing their instruments. Guests whispered and gathered their coats. You're making a scene, Dad hissed. No, I'm making a point. I turned to address the remaining crowd. Thank you all for coming. Unfortunately, my budget doesn't cover the cost of decades of betrayal and emotional abuse. The party's over. Genesis appeared beside me, squeezing my hand. Sierra stood firm, her presence a shield against my parents' glares. You'll regret this, Trinity threatened. I already regret every dollar I spent trying to buy your approval. I picked up my purse. But unlike you, Mom, I won't spend the next 28 years taking it out on someone else. The lights dimmed, Royals doing. In the half darkness, I saw my mother's face crumple, my father's mask of control finally crack. Trinity stood frozen, her perfect world tilting on its axis. Grandma, I said, would you like to get coffee? Sierra smiled. I'd love to, dear. We walked toward the exit, Genesis falling into step beside us. Behind us, I heard Trinity's shrill voice demanding someone fix this, Jasper arguing with the band about payment, my parents calling my name with increasing desperation. At the door, I turned one last time. By the way, Dad, I'm not a bohemian free spirit. I'm a successful business owner who just taught you a very expensive lesson about karma. The door closed behind us with a satisfying thud. In the lobby, Lindsay waited, car keys in hand. You okay? She asked. I looked at Sierra, who nodded encouragingly, then at Genesis, who grinned and linked her arm through mine. No, I answered honestly, but I will be. Through the ballroom doors, I could hear chaos erupting as vendors demanded payment and guests rushed to leave. The perfect social event was imploding, and for once I didn't feel responsible for fixing it. Come on, Lindsay said. I know a great coffee shop where we can hear the rest of these family secrets. As we walked out into the cool night air, my phone buzzed with messages I had no intention of reading. Some bridges are worth burning, especially when you're the one who paid to build them in the first place. The coffee shop was nearly empty at this hour. We claimed a corner booth, four women in evening wear amid the late night study crowd. Sierra's hands wrapped around her mug, her wedding ring catching the soft lighting. Your mother was 6 months pregnant with you, and I caught your father with his secretary, she said, at the company Christmas party, of all places. Classy, Lindsay muttered. I confronted Lucille that night. She said she already knew. Sierra's voice hardened. She'd known for months but was keeping quiet to maintain appearances. My phone buzzed again. Trinity's name flashed on the screen, followed by a stream of messages. The hotel is threatening to bill us for damages. Mom is hysterical. How could you embarrass us like this? Dad's lawyer will hear about this. I turned the phone face down. They're melting down, aren't they? Genesis asked. Complete nuclear meltdown. Sierra continued. When you were born, Lucille wouldn't even look at you. I told her she had two choices: start being a mother to both her daughters equally or lose her inheritance. That explains the bare minimum parenting, I said. She chose money over healing, Sierra sighed, but she found ways to punish you that I couldn't control. Small things: birthday parties canceled last minute, dance recitals she was too busy to attend. While Trinity got everything, I added, Trinity was her proof that the marriage was worth saving. You were her reminder of why it almost wasn't. The bell above the door chimed. I looked up to see Royal walking in, still in his event manager uniform. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, but I thought you should know what happened after you left. Pull up a chair, Lindsay offered. This sounds good. Royal sat, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. I've managed hundreds of events, never seen anything quite like this. That bad? Your sister tried to write a personal check to the band. It bounced. He smiled slightly. Apparently, their vacation home renovations have left them a bit overextended. Genesis snorted. Karma's not just a bitch, she's an accountant. What about my parents? I asked. Your father tried to salvage his reputation by announcing you were having a mental episode. Unfortunately, one of the guests works for your biggest client. My stomach dropped. Margaret was there? She left me her card. Royal pulled out a business card and said, and I quote, tell Eloise I'm doubling our contract. Anyone who stands up to toxic family like that is exactly who I want handling my company's rebranding. Tears pricked at my eyes. Lindsay squeezed my hand. There's more, Royal continued. The hotel manager overheard your grandmother's revelation. She lost her own mother to suicide after a similar situation. She's voided all additional charges out of principle. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad. You've destroyed your mother's happiness. I hope you're satisfied. Sierra peered at the message. Interesting how he's still blaming everyone but himself. Classic narcissist move, Lindsay agreed. Genesis leaned forward. So what happens now? Now? I took a deep breath. Now I do what I should have done years ago. I'm done funding their emotional pyramid scheme. They'll try to guilt you back, Sierra warned. Let them try. I've got receipts, literal and emotional. Royal stood to leave. Speaking of receipts, the final vendor payments were processed. Everything's officially closed out. Thank you, I said, for everything. He nodded. It was my pleasure, truly. After he left, we sat in comfortable silence. My phone had gone quiet. They'd either given up or were plotting their next move. You know what's funny? I said finally. All these years, I thought if I just paid enough, gave enough, achieved enough, they'd finally love me properly. And now? Genesis asked. Now I realize that was never going to happen. You can't buy love from people who've already sold their souls to their own lies. Sierra reached across the table and took my hand. Your mother made her choice 30 years ago. She chose appearances over healing, bitterness over growth. That's not your burden to bear anymore. My phone lit up one last time. A message from Mom. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I picked up the phone, typed 6 words, and hit send. No, Mom, I just stopped paying. Then I blocked their numbers, one by one, watching each name disappear like stars blinking out at dawn. Trinity, Dad, Mom, years of manipulation and guilt reduced to a series of taps on a screen. So, Lindsay said brightly, who's ready for dessert? I hear it's better when you're not serving it to people who don't deserve it. For the first time that night, I laughed freely. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply walking away, preferably in designer heels that you bought with your own success. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and a viral social media storm. Someone had filmed Dad's biggest regret speech, and my response, the internet predictably had opinions. You're trending, Lindsay announced, barging into my apartment with coffee and bagels. The video has over 100,000 views? I groaned into my pillow. Fantastic. Actually, it might be. She turned her phone toward me. Check your business email. I grabbed my laptop and opened my inbox. It was flooded with messages. Saw the video. Need a designer with that kind of backbone. Your portfolio is impressive. Are you taking new clients? Would love to discuss rebranding opportunities. Holy shit, I whispered. My personal email was another story. Trinity had sent a novel length screed about family loyalty and public embarrassment. The irony was apparently lost on her. A knock at the door made us both jump. Genesis peeked in. Your grandmother's here, and you might want to see what's happening at your parents' house. I threw on clothes and followed them outside. 3 houses down from my parents' perfectly manicured lawn, a news van was parked. They're trying to spin it, Genesis explained as we drove past. Your dad gave an interview about his ungrateful daughter who ambushed their anniversary. Bold strategy, Lindsay muttered. We found Sierra at a small French cafe, looking remarkably composed for someone whose family was imploding on social media. Perfect timing, she said. I was just about to order breakfast and explain why your mother really named you Eloise. I slid into the seat across from her. I always assumed it was from the children's books. No. Sierra pulled an old leather journal from her bag. You were named after my mother, your great grandmother, the only person who ever stood up to your grandfather's abuse. She opened the journal, revealing yellowed pages filled with elegant handwriting. Your mother adored her. When Eloise, the first Eloise, died, Lucille was devastated. She promised to name her daughter after her, to carry on her strength. But then Dad's affair happened, I said, and suddenly the name became another reminder. She couldn't take it back without raising questions, but she could punish you for carrying it. The waiter arrived with coffee I ordered mechanically, my mind spinning. There's something else you should know, Sierra continued. Your great grandmother left a separate inheritance, one that skips a generation. Lindsay choked on her coffee. It was meant for your mother originally, Sierra explained. But when she chose to stay with your father, to perpetuate the cycle of abuse, the terms of the trust changed. What are you saying? I'm saying that your mother's bitterness isn't just about the affair. It's about the $3 million she lost when she failed to meet the trust's moral clause. Genesis whistled low. That's one hell of a karma payment. The money's been gathering interest for 28 years, Sierra said. It's yours now. All you have to do is sign. She pulled out an envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. This is why they're really panicking, I realized. They found out about this. Your father's secretary became his paralegal. She saw the trust documents come through yesterday. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Jasper. We can work something out. Your parents are willing to apologize publicly. Trinity, too. Just be reasonable about the inheritance. I showed the message to the others. Wow, Genesis said. They're not even pretending it's about family anymore. It never was, Sierra replied. It was always about control. I stared at the trust documents. The amount made me dizzy. What would great grandmother Eloise do? I asked. Sierra smiled. She'd tell you that the best revenge isn't spending the money on them, it's spending it on yourself. I picked up the pen. One condition, I said. You have to help me donate a portion to domestic abuse survivors. women who need help leaving toxic situations. Like mother, like grandmother, Sierra said softly. That's exactly what the first Eloise would have wanted. I signed my name, Eloise, feeling the weight of its history for the first time. Not a burden, but a legacy of strength. My phone buzzed again. Trinity. Mom's having a breakdown. Hope you're happy. I thought about the trust, about the video, about years of calculated cruelty disguised as family love. Blocker 2? Lindsay suggested. No, I said, typing a response. I want them to see what happens next. I sent back 3 words. Watch me thrive. Then I picked up my coffee, clinked cups with my real family, the ones who chose to stay, and started planning how to honor both Eloise's legacies. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just walking away, it's building something beautiful from the ashes of what you leave behind. 1 month after the anniversary party, I sat in my newly expanded office reviewing applications for the Eloise Foundation, our new nonprofit supporting women leaving toxic family situations. The viral video had evolved into something bigger than family drama. It had become a movement. My intercom buzzed. Miss Eloise, your sister's here. I looked up to see Trinity through the glass walls, wearing jeans instead of her usual designer clothes. She looked smaller somehow. Send her in. She entered hesitantly, clutching her purse. Nice office. What do you want, Trinity? She sank into a chair. Jasper left me. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. She laughed bitterly. But you should be happy to know those vacation homes were mortgaged to the hilt. We're losing everything. I kept my face neutral. Again, what do you want? Mom and Dad are selling their house, moving into a condo. Her voice cracked. Everything's falling apart and it's your fault. My fault? I set down my pen. Not Dad's for cheating, not Mom's for taking it out on me, not yours for helping them. We were a family. No, we were a pyramid scheme with better marketing. Trinity's face crumpled. I didn't know. About Dad's affair. About why Mom treated you that way. I swear. But you enjoyed it. I. She looked down. Yes. At least she was finally honest about something. Did you know, I said, that every time I achieved something, Mom would call you first? To make sure you were okay? To reassure you that you were still the favorite? She was protecting me. From what? Your sister's success? That's not protection, Trinity. That's manipulation. My phone lit up. A text from Genesis. Incoming drama. Your parents just pulled up. Let me guess, I said to Trinity. This isn't a solo mission. On cue, Mom and Dad burst through my office door. Dad had lost weight. Mom's designer clothes had been replaced by department store brands. Enough is enough, Dad announced. This revenge has gone too far. I leaned back in my chair. This isn't revenge. This is consequences. We're your parents. Really? Because last month I was your biggest regret. Mom stepped forward. We made mistakes. Mistakes? I pulled up the viral video on my computer, turned it toward them. Watch it again. Watch yourselves. That's not a mistake. That's decades of calculated cruelty. They flinched at their own words playing back. The foundation launches next week, I continued. Great grandmother Eloise's money is going to help other women recognize what Mom couldn't, that staying in toxic situations costs more than leaving ever could. You're bankrupting us, Dad growled. No, your choices bankrupted you. I just stopped funding them. Trinity spoke up. Can't we fix this? As a family? Fix what? The fact that Mom's inheritance went to me? That your perfect lives were built on credit cards and lies? That the daughter you dismissed built something meaningful while you were busy tearing her down? We said we're sorry, Mom cried. No, you said you're sorry you got caught. Sorry you lost the money. Sorry your reputations are ruined. Not once have you apologized for what you actually did. Security appeared in the doorway. Genesis must have called them. It's time for you to leave, I said. This isn't over, Dad threatened. Actually, it is. I have a foundation to run, a business to expand, and a life to live, without you in it. They were escorted out, Trinity trailing behind them. Through the glass, I watched their shoulders slump as they walked away. 3 people who had finally lost the power to hurt me. My phone buzzed with messages from my real family. Lindsay, need backup? Genesis, wine night. Sierra, so proud of you, dear. I smiled. then opened my laptop to finish reviewing applications. A new one had just come in, a young woman trying to leave her emotionally abusive parents. Her story could have been mine if I hadn't found the strength to walk away. I approved her application immediately, then added a note: "Your future is worth more than their approval." The foundation's tagline flashed on my screen: "Breaking cycles, building futures." Below it, a quote from the first Eloise's journal: "Sometimes the strongest family ties are the ones we choose to cut." My office door opened again. This time it was Royal, now our foundation's event coordinator. "The launch party venue is confirmed," he said. "Should I put your family on the do not admit list?" I thought about Trinity's jeans, Mom's department store clothes, Dad's hollow threats. "No need," I replied. "They couldn't afford the tickets anyway." He smiled. "Karma really does keep receipts, doesn't it?" "Yes," I said, looking at the foundation's growing waitlist. "And so do I." The Eloise Foundation's launch party buzzed with energy. Women from our first round of grant recipients mingled with donors, sharing stories of survival and renewal. I watched from the sidelines as Sierra charmed potential investors, her silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. "Your great grandmother would be proud," Genesis said, appearing beside me with two champagne glasses, "both of the foundation and of you." "I keep expecting them to show up," I admitted, "to try one last manipulation." "They won't." Lindsay joined us, smartphone in hand. "Trinity just posted on social media. They've moved to Florida. Apparently, Dad found a job selling timeshares." "How fitting," Genesis snorted. "He's still selling fake dreams." Royal approached with a concerned look. "Miss Eloise, there's a situation at the entrance. A young woman says she's your cousin Margaret." My heart stopped. I hadn't seen Margaret since we were kids. She'd disappeared after a huge fight with her parents, my dad's brother and his wife, who'd been just as toxic as my parents. "Let her in?" Margaret looked exactly like her social media photos, thin, nervous, but with determined eyes. She clutched a worn journal. "I saw the video," she said without preamble. "And then I found this in my mom's attic." She handed me the journal. Inside, letters between her mother and my mom detailed their shared mission to toughen up their daughters by breaking them down. They had a system. Margaret's voice shook. Every time we achieved something, they'd find ways to diminish it. They called it keeping us humble. "Keeping us controlled," I corrected. "I want to help," she said, "with the foundation. These journals, people need to see how systematic emotional abuse can be." Before I could respond, Sierra appeared. "Margaret? Little Maggie?" They embraced, tears flowing. Another survivor, another story, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "Ladies and gentlemen," Royal announced, "please welcome our founder to the stage." The crowd gathered. I saw familiar faces. The event manager from my parents' anniversary, now our volunteer coordinator, the hotel manager who'd waived the charges, now a board member, even my old client Margaret, who'd doubled my contract, sitting in the front row. I took the microphone, my hands steady. "Welcome to the Eloise Foundation's official launch. We're here because cycles don't break themselves. They're broken by people brave enough to say, 'Enough.'" The room hushed. My great grandmother Eloise left behind more than money. She left a blueprint for freedom. Tonight, we're honoring that legacy by announcing our first initiative, the Phoenix Project. Screens around the room lit up with our new program details. Every woman who receives our help will become a mentor to another woman trying to leave toxic family dynamics, because the opposite of abuse isn't just escape, it's building something better. Applause erupted. In the back, I saw Margaret clutching her journal, nodding. "Someone recently asked if I regret destroying my family's perfect image," I continued. "The truth is, you can't destroy what was never real, but you can build something authentic from the ashes." More applause. Sierra wiped away tears. "So no, I don't regret exposing the truth. I don't regret using my inheritance to help others. And I definitely don't regret charging my parents' anniversary party to their credit cards." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Genesis high-fived Lindsay. "Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free, and then holding the door open for others to follow." The celebration lasted late into the night. Margaret shared more journals, each one a roadmap of calculated manipulation. Sierra told stories about the first Eloise, painting a picture of strength echoing through generations. Near midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Mom and Dad saw the foundation launch online. They're telling everyone you stole their inheritance. Should we worry? Trinity, using a new number. I showed the message to my chosen family, Lindsay, Genesis, Sierra, and now Margaret. They waited for my response. I typed, "They can tell whatever story they want. I'm too busy writing my own." Then I turned back to the room full of survivors becoming warriors, mentors becoming sisters, strangers becoming family. "Ready to change some lives?" Royal asked, clipboard in hand. I looked around at my real inheritance. Not money or status, but the strength to break cycles and build bridges. The power to turn pain into purpose. The wisdom to know that sometimes the happiest endings start with walking away. "More than ready," I replied. "Let's get to work." Because that's the thing about karma. It doesn't just keep receipts, it pays them forward.
Welcome to our channel, where we dive into the ups and downs of cute girl relationships and the challenges people face in their everyday lives. Today, we're starting with a story that hits close to home. I hate my mother-in-law. From the moment I met her, I knew she didn't like me, and accepting me as her daughter-in-law was never easy for her. But this time, she went too far, pushing me to the point where I couldn't hold back anymore. I had to air her dirty laundry. Now, you might think I'm just a sweet and caring person, the kind you'd compare to a harmless kitten. But my mother taught me something important. When people are mean for no reason, you need to stand up for yourself, even if it means fighting dirty. And this time, my mother-in-law decided to be the biggest troublemaker in the family, assuming I wouldn't fight back. But she was wrong. My husband works in the film industry as part of the technical staff, which means he travels all over the world for various shoots. One of the perks of his job is that sometimes he invites me or the whole family to join him on these trips, giving us the chance to go sightseeing. This month, we had a trip to New Caledonia planned, a trip that had been on the calendar for a while. Everything was set, and my mother-in-law and I even made it to the airport on time, which was a small miracle considering the traffic. We unloaded all our bags at the airport, and I carefully counted to make sure we hadn't forgotten anything. Feeling confident that everything was in order, we headed inside. My mother-in-law asked me to drop off our luggage at the baggage counter, so I separated my hand luggage from the checked-in bags and asked her to do the same. Then I told her to go ahead with the security check while I finished up with the luggage drop-off. After completing the luggage drop-off, I went through the security check myself and started looking for my mother-in-law. I spotted her from a distance, and she seemed to be searching for something. When I approached her, she told me that one of her handbags was missing, the one that contained her diabetes medication. She insisted that she couldn't leave without it. I told her to take a deep breath and try to remember she might have accidentally left the bag with the rest of the luggage. She seemed flustered and couldn't recall, so she asked me to check if it was there. Dutifully, I went back to the baggage counter and asked the attendant if any luggage had been left behind or if one of our bags had gone overweight, since one was missing. Unfortunately, the attendant said everything was in order and there were no unmarked or extra bags. Feeling dejected, I headed back to my mother-in-law, but before I could go through the security check again, airport security stopped me and asked me to follow them. Confused, I asked what was going on, but they insisted that everything would be explained once I came with them. They led me to a private holding area where they informed me that a woman had reported me. Apparently, she overheard me using the words gun and drugs, and she feared I might be a terrorist. They said they needed to ensure I wasn't hiding anything. I was absolutely furious. I hadn't made any such comments. I barely had time to check in before our flight. Then, a chilling thought crossed my mind. My mother-in-law. It suddenly hit me that she might be behind this. I told the officers I would fully cooperate with their investigation, confident that they would find nothing. After an exhausting 18 of questioning and searching, I was finally cleared. Once the ordeal was over, I showed the officer who had mentioned the woman's report a picture of my mother-in-law and asked if she was the one who reported me. When he confirmed it was her, a wave of rage surged through me. I walked out of there fuming with anger. This was the last straw. I had tolerated her slanders and toxic behavior for too long because I rarely saw her, but this time, she had gone too far. I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with it. It was time to teach her a lesson she would never forget. My first move was to expose her in her precious suburban neighborhood. She loved to show off and pretend she was something she wasn't, and I knew just how to shatter that illusion. I had been to few of the neighborhood parties when visiting with my husband, so I knew exactly how they all tried to outdo each other. My mother-in-law was no different, often passing off cheap bakery treats as creations from a famous chef. I decided it was time to reveal the truth and expose all her secrets. When I invited everyone over, I decided it was time to expose the truth. I revealed where the so-called gourmet sweets actually came from a local bakery, not the high-end pâtisserie my mother-in-law had bragged about. I didn't stop there. I also exposed her imported English vase, which she claimed was a rare find from Australia, but was actually a mass-produced item available on Etsy. Watching her lies unravel and her reputation crumble in front of her friends brought me a sense of satisfaction. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more card to play. Since I was already at her house, I decided to wait for my father-in-law to return home. When he arrived, he was surprised to see me, knowing I was supposed to catch a flight back to Portland that day. He asked why I hadn't left, and I told him there was something important he needed to know. I shared with him that I had recently learned about my mother-in-law's affair with one of the assistant directors during our trip to the Bahamas. I explained that my husband had told me about it after hearing it from one of the set staff, who had caught them together in the prop room. My husband had wanted to keep it a secret, not wanting to be the one to cause trouble in their marriage. But after everything my mother-in-law had put me through, especially at the airport, I felt no such obligation. I wanted her to suffer the consequences of her actions. So, I laid everything out in front of my father-in-law, leaving nothing unsaid. The next day, I left her house, confident that her pretentious little life was about to fall apart. Despite the satisfaction of exposing her lies, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling that I might have gone too far. In my anger, I may have hurt my husband by revealing the truth about his mother's affair. I regretted that part a little, and I couldn't help but wonder, was I being the a-hole here? A week passed, and I found out that my mother-in-law had returned home. Before she did, though, she had already tried to stir up trouble. She told my husband that I hadn't gone to New Caledonia because I was tired of traveling all the time just to spend a few days with him. She claimed I didn't think it was worth the effort anymore. That lying woman actually thought she could create a misunderstanding between us. It took me nearly 3 hours to reassure my husband that I love our life together and that I missed the plane due to a simple misunderstanding. I decided not to explain everything to him over the phone, especially after I had already revealed his mother's affair to his father. I knew that once she arrived home, she would find the mess waiting for her, and I was eagerly anticipating the call I was sure to receive once she did. Now, I'm just waiting for that moment, and when it happens, I'll be ready to update her on what I've done. I finally got to see her reaction, and let me tell you, I did not expect my mother-in-law to show up at my house unannounced. When she did, I was both surprised and a bit relieved, because it meant I could witness firsthand the fury on her face as she grappled with the chaos that her life had become. The look of sheer anger she gave me when I politely invited her in was all the satisfaction I needed. The moment she stepped inside, she exploded with rage. She screamed at me, calling me all sorts of names, and told me that I had no right to do what I did. She said I was a jerk and that karma would surely come back to bite me. According to her, I should be ashamed of causing strife in the family. She even went as far as to say that I didn't deserve her son, claiming she had known all along that sooner or later I would show my true colors. I could see she was on the verge of slapping me, but somehow, she held herself back. Her outburst reignited all the anger I had been suppressing for so long. I couldn't hold back any longer and told her that she was lucky I only exposed her secrets. If I had really wanted to get back at her, I could have pressed charges for the false accusations she made against me at the airport. After that, I told her to get out of my house. But instead of feeling better, I felt worse. It's been 3 months since that confrontation, and a lot has happened since then. My mother-in-law has been fighting nonstop with my father-in-law ever since I exposed her affair. Initially, I thought it was a one-time thing, but it turns out she was still seeing that person, and she eventually confessed this to my father-in-law. Once he found out, he kicked her out of the house, and she's been living with her sister ever since. 2 weeks, I went to talk to my father-in-law because the guilt was eating me up. I felt responsible for the fights between them, but he assured me I had nothing to feel guilty about. He told me this wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but it was definitely the last. They are now separated, and he has no intention of getting back together with her. I'm left feeling conflicted about everything. They still haven't told my husband about the separation, and they've asked me to keep it a secret until he returns home. My father-in-law wants to be the one to break the news to him in person. I'm just waiting for the right time, but it's hard to know how to feel about all of this. I know my in-laws had been lying to my husband for a while, pretending they had worked things out between them. It made me feel like I was caught in the middle, like an unfaithful wife, even though I never wanted any of this to happen. Finally, my husband came home last week, and 5 days ago, he met with my father-in-law. That's when he found out about his parents' separation. To my surprise, he was pretty understanding about it. But when he learned that I was the one who had triggered this whole mess, he was understandably upset. He asked me why I had done all of this, and I explained everything starting from what happened at the airport to all the things that had happened before then. I apologized to him, telling him that I already felt guilty about my actions. I never intended for things to escalate this far. Thankfully, my husband understood the situation and said that this was bound to come out eventually. We're not completely okay yet, but I'm hopeful that, with time, we'll be fine. Now, looking back, I realized that while my mother-in-law was certainly out of line, my actions were also harsh. I agree with those who think what I did was wrong. By trying to take her down, I ended up hurting my father-in-law and betraying the trust my husband had in me when he confided about the affair. That's not something I'm proud of, and it definitely makes me look like the bad guy in this situation. I have to admit, both my mother-in-law and I acted immaturely, like we were in some kind of middle school drama. Instead of communicating and resolving our issues like adults, we both made choices that led to this entire mess. It's clear that we both share the blame, and honestly, we deserve the fallout that came from it. On a different note, I also wanted to share something else that's been weighing on my mind. I'm a 21-year-old female, and I have a 25-year-old cousin who got engaged about 5 months ago. While preparing for the wedding, my cousin mentioned she wanted to wear a diamond necklace to match her reception gown. My aunt then asked if I could let her borrow the diamond necklace that I inherited from my great-grandmother after her passing. Everyone in my family knows how much that necklace means to me. It's the last thing I have from my great-grandmother, and it's incredibly special. So, I flat out refused and told them that the necklace is very delicate and I didn't want to share it. I even offered to let her use another necklace that I got from my grandfather, but she insisted on having that specific one. I had to be firm and strictly forbade anyone from touching that necklace. As much as I wanted to be accommodating, I couldn't risk something happening to the last piece I have from my great-grandmother. I thought I had made it very clear that the necklace was off limits, but on the day of the reception, I noticed my cousin wearing the exact same necklace. I was furious, but I chose not to make a scene. It was her wedding, after all, and I didn't want to ruin it for her. When I asked my mother about it, she told me that my father had tried to stop my cousin from borrowing the necklace, but she kept pestering him until he finally gave in. Even though I was angry, I couldn't really blame my dad. My cousin can be incredibly persistent and difficult to deal with. After the reception ended and the party started, I quietly took back my necklace and left the venue without saying a word. The next day, after everyone had sobered up, I received a call from my cousin, who was crying and accusing me of stealing her jewelry. Her husband got on the phone and even threatened to press charges. I calmly explained to him that the necklace rightfully belonged to me and that my cousin had borrowed it without my permission. He didn't believe me and called me a liar, insisting that I was the one who had borrowed her jewelry. At that point, my mother, who had been listening to the whole conversation, had had enough and ended the call. Later, some of my relatives criticized me for taking back the necklace without saying anything and even called me an a-hole for not sharing it from the start, claiming that it didn't really belong to me. I might have been seen as an a-hole for not sharing, but I can't understand what I did wrong by reclaiming what was mine. The necklace was always mine, and I didn't think it was wrong to take it back after it was borrowed without my consent. Now, I'm left wondering how to address the situation with my dad. I've never had to confront him before, and I'm unsure how to go about it. Should I ask him to give me the key to the safe where my jewelry is kept, or should I just ask him not to give away my things without asking me first? My dad has apologized, but he's still hesitant about letting me have control over the safe for my jewelry. My aunt eventually called and asked them not to press charges, so now I'm just waiting to see how things turn out. As for me, I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here. Some people might think I could have handled it differently, but I believe that taking back what was rightfully mine was the right thing to do. I know you're young, but it's important to start securing anything valuable from now on. No one else should have access to your personal belongings. Your father shouldn't have handed over your necklace to your cousin, especially without telling you. It's time to invest in a small safe where you can keep your valuables safe and secure. It's too easy for someone to borrow something like that and never return it. Since you're 20, getting your own safe and moving everything important into it is a wise decision. Your property is yours, and your father shouldn't have been the one to give it away, even to family. You should also consider asking your father to call your cousin and her husband to make it clear that any attempt to press charges will be met with legal action, such as a cease and desist order. It sounds like your cousin may have been envious of your necklace all along and used her wedding as an excuse to take something she felt more entitled to than you. She's 7 years older, so she might have some feelings about it, but that doesn't justify what she did. Talk to your father, get your things back, and get your own safe. Clearly, he can't be trusted not to give in to pressure and loan out your belongings after you've already said no. On a different note, my sister, who is 24, has been living with me, 26-year-old female, for the past 3 years. I told her she could stay with me as long as she wanted, but she needed to follow my rules. One of the main rules is that she can't have men over. She can invite people in, but they can't stay overnight. I've been pretty lenient, honestly. She's had both male and female friends stay overnight without my permission, and I didn't say anything because I knew her friends and didn't think it was a big deal. But last week, she crossed the line by bringing a stranger into our home without my knowledge. I was home at the time, and she waited until she thought I was fully asleep before letting the man in. She probably thought I wouldn't notice and wouldn't get caught, but this morning I woke up really early and saw an extra pair of shoes that didn't belong to either of us. That's when I realized someone else was in the house. After the stranger left, I confronted my sister and told her that what she did was completely disrespectful and not okay. I warned her that if she ever does it again, she'll have to move out. My mom thinks I'm overreacting and should just let it slide because my sister is young and wants to enjoy her life. I don't want to be the strict, boring sister, but my sister and my mom both know how deeply shaken I was when someone tried to break into my home while I was alone. That experience left me feeling scared and vulnerable, and it's the main reason I'm so cautious about having strangers in my house. It's not just a small rule. It's about feeling safe in my own home. My sister has been living with me for free, and I've been okay with that because she's family. I love her, and I want to help her out. But when she disrespects my boundaries, it crosses a line. I've made it clear that if she does something like this again, I won't hesitate to ask her to leave. It's not something I want to do, but I need to protect my own peace of mind. I really appreciate all the advice and honest feedback you all have given me. I guess I needed to hear it from others to really understand what I should do. My sister is my only sibling, and because of that, I've always felt a strong responsibility to take care of her. But now I realize that part of caring for her is also giving her some tough love when it's needed. After talking things over, we've decided that it's best for her to move back in with our mom. She does have a job, but she's gotten used to me paying for everything, and I see now that I've been enabling her behavior. This situation has taught me an important lesson. While she'll always be my family, she needs to grow up and learn to take care of herself. It's my house, and that means it's my rules. Sure, my sister is an adult, and she's entitled to have guests over. But it's just basic courtesy to let the other people in the house know when someone is coming over, especially when it's a stranger. Bringing strangers into our home without telling me isn't just inconsiderate, it's also unsafe. My sister knew exactly why I have this rule in place. She was fully aware of my past experience and how it's made me extra cautious. Yet, she still chose to break the rule. If our mom thinks it's not a big deal, Then maybe my sister should move back in with her and see how long it takes before our mom gets upset when she brings strangers home. My sister is 24 years old, not 15. I've been more than generous by letting her live with me for free, even when she's broken some very basic rules of common courtesy. I have a very valid reason for not wanting strangers in my home, and if my mom and sister can't understand that, it's on them. I've decided that I need to stand firm. It's my house, and my rules should be respected. If my sister can't follow them, then she'll need to find a new place to live. There's no reason for me to feel bad about this situation. My mom and sister might be trying to make me feel guilty, but I've realized that I can't let them manipulate my feelings. I don't deserve that, and I'm not going to allow it to happen. If my mom really believes that my sister is just young and should be allowed to do whatever she wants, then she can take her in. The truth is, my sister's behavior is putting both of us in danger. We're 3 women living alone, and it's just not smart or safe to bring a strange man into our home, especially without my knowledge. And really, if she wanted to spend time with this guy, why didn't she go to his place? Maybe he doesn't have a place of his own, or maybe he's already living with someone else. Either way, my sister's refusal to take my rules seriously means she needs to find her own place. That way, she can invite people over whenever she wants, and I can have the peace of mind I need. In the end, I love my sister, and I want the best for her. But part of that means helping her understand the importance of respecting other people's boundaries. She needs to learn that her actions have consequences, and if she can't respect my rules, she'll have to face the reality of finding her own place to live.
We took my cousin in after she lost her family, but what she did to me one day changed my life forever. She accused me of something so terrible that I can't even say it right now. After that, my family beat me badly and then disowned me. Hi, everyone. I'm a 38-year-old man, and I have a problem I need help with today. I feel really conflicted and alone. I have nowhere else to turn, and since I've been reading stories here for a while, I thought this would be the best place to share mine. I'd really appreciate any advice you could offer me. There's a lot of background, so I need to go over some things. This is going to be a long story. First, let me tell you about my terrible cousin, Rachel. She's the worst person I've ever known. I know that sounds harsh to say about a family member, but for Rachel, it's true. Then there's my mom and dad, which is a whole other issue, and I'll get into that soon. As I got older and learned about psychology and why people do bad things, I tried to give Rachel the benefit of the doubt. But in the end, I just couldn't forgive her, and I still hate my whole family because of what happened. Sure, Rachel had a tough childhood. My uncle, who was Rachel's dad and my dad's brother, was the black sheep of the family. He was an abusive, lazy man who drank and smoked all the time and never worked. He hurt Rachel, and her mom wasn't much better. I understand how trauma can deeply affect people, especially when they experience it at a young age. But I believe it's our responsibility as people to deal with our trauma so that we don't pass that pain on to others. We ended up passing the pain we felt onto others around us. Sadly, Rachel never learned to break this cycle and became a lot like her parents in many ways. My parents knew about Rachel's tough home life, so they were always very protective of her. They tried to help by calling Child Protective Services on my aunt and uncle, but when the authorities showed up, Rachel's parents always managed to talk their way out of trouble. Then one day, Rachel's parents were in a car accident. They were running from the police after robbing a store to support their drug habit. They crashed their car and both died. Rachel was left an orphan, which is a difficult thing to go through, even when your parents are as awful as hers were. Instead of letting her end up in the foster care system, my parents decided to adopt her. Even though I didn't know Rachel very well, despite all our family get-togethers, and even though our interactions as kids were always unpleasant, I was kind of excited about having a little sister move in. Sure, she was only a year younger than me, but as an only child, I often felt lonely and thought it would be fun to have someone to play with. If only I had known how much my life would change after that, I would have begged my parents to send her far away, because her heart was as cold as ice. My mom and dad weren't perfect parents either. They drank a lot and weren't great with managing money, but they worked hard to provide for me. They did their best to support me, but even when I was young, I overheard my mom talking to her friends. She would say how she had always wanted a daughter instead of a son. She didn't know I was nearby listening, but even as a little kid, I understood what she meant. Those words cut deep, like a knife. As soon as Rachel moved in, it felt like my mom and dad acted like I didn't exist anymore. I've always been a shy, awkward kid, and I guess that disappointed my traditional parents. My dad had been the captain of the football team in high school, but I couldn't even throw a ball without tripping over my own feet. I was clumsy and didn't know how to talk to girls, while my dad had been a ladies' man, dating all over town before settling down with my mom. No matter what I did, I couldn't get a girl to like me. My parents always told me I needed to toughen up. They said I was too soft, so my self-esteem was already pretty low. But when Rachel came into the picture, it was completely destroyed. Mom and Dad adored Rachel. They treated her like she could do no wrong. If she drew a picture, no matter how bad it looked, they would hang it on the fridge. But when I drew something, they'd barely glance at it before tossing it aside. Rachel would get praised for getting BS in school, while I got straight A's, and they never once told me they were proud of me. She always got the best birthday parties, the best Christmas gifts, and everything she wanted. When Rachel started going to school with me, things only got worse. She was a grade below me, but she did everything she could to make my life miserable. I was an awkward nerd, and Rachel was pretty, popular, and loved to gossip. She quickly became part of the cool crowd, the jocks and the cheerleaders, the same people who loved picking on me. Rachel fit right in with them, like a fish in water. Her boyfriend was the captain of the football team, and he was also my biggest bully. He and his friends would do horrible things to me, like shoving my head in the toilet and other humiliating acts. No matter how hard I tried to stay out of their way, I got beaten up every single day. Rachel never once stood up for me. Instead, she'd watch with a smirk on her face, or sometimes even laugh. I'm not exaggerating when I say she acted like a sociopath. She made my life at school a living nightmare, and she wasn't satisfied with just that. She also made sure my home life was just as unbearable. It felt like I was living in a prison, and the torment would start all over again the next day at school. I never got a break. The emotional damage I suffered during that time can't be overstated. It changed me forever. I'm scarred because of all the abuse I went through. I tried telling my parents about the bullying at school, but they brushed it off like it was nothing. They said it was just boys being boys. My dad would always tell me I needed to man up, as if that would fix everything. I wanted the bullying to stop. My parents saw me with black eyes and bruises, but they still didn't care. Rachel would just stand there and laugh during these talks. Besides that, she was always making up lies about me. She would break things around the house and blame me. Sometimes she would even cry and tell my parents that I hit her. She was so good at lying that she almost made me doubt myself, like maybe I really did what she said. Of course, my parents believed everything she told them. I lost track of how many times I was unfairly punished for things I didn't do. Over time, this started to wear me down. I felt worthless and became more and more depressed. As the stress piled up, my grades started to slip. Even though my grades were still better than Rachel's, my parents scolded me for it. This just made me feel even worse. Because my grades dropped, I couldn't get into the university I dreamed of. I felt stuck in our small town, in that miserable house. I ended up going to a local community college and worked hard on an engineering degree. I just wanted to be successful and get far away from my awful family. Rachel, on the other hand, had no plans for her future. She didn't even graduate from high school. She dropped out at the start of her senior year and began sleeping with nearly every guy in town. She partied all the time, got hooked on drugs, and my parents kept making excuses for her. They would say something weak like they disapproved of her behavior, but they were too soft on her. They made it easy for her to keep acting the way she did. During this time, I was still living at home, and Rachel's treatment of me got even worse. I remember one night she had a party at the house with her boyfriend at the time. She had a bunch of boyfriends. All her friends were there, and I was trying to study for an exam. I asked them politely if they could quiet down, speaking in the nicest way possible. But Rachel and her boyfriend took it the wrong way. She told her boyfriend to kick my butt, and he did just that. He beat me so badly that I had to call the police. I was taken to the hospital for my injuries, but my parents and Rachel told me I was the one overreacting. They even convinced me not to press charges against that guy. Looking back, I should have sued all of them. Then came the day that changed my life forever. I was 23 at the time. Rachel always had to be the center of attention. Everything had to revolve around her, like she was the center of the universe. Whenever something went wrong in her life, she took it out on others. She was often rude to my parents, even though they had done so much for her over the years. But whenever anything went wrong in her life, I was always her main target. Recently, Rachel had been dumped by another boyfriend. I guess in her mind, this guy was the one. She was really upset after this breakup. She never made good choices when it came to men, and to make things worse, this guy was the father of her child, Frank. Rachel was already struggling to take care of him, so most of the responsibility had fallen on me and my parents. It was a bad situation, and I wasn't happy about it. Despite everything we were doing to help her, Rachel had been extra rude and sour lately, like we owed her something. Right before the event that changed everything, Rachel and I had gotten into another argument. This wasn't unusual, we argued a lot, and things often got heated, so I didn't think much of it. During the argument, she kept insulting me, calling me an ugly loser and throwing all kinds of nasty words my way. I'd had enough of her abuse, so I snapped. I told her that every man would leave her because she was worthless. She looked furious, angrier than I had ever seen her, but I just walked away, thinking it was another dumb fight. I didn't realize how seriously Rachel had taken that comment. I was minding my own business one day when my parents suddenly came to my room and literally broke down my door. I was in total shock, demanding to know why my parents and other family members had suddenly barged into my room. I was so confused. Then I saw Rachel walk in, crying like she was heartbroken, but I knew it was all fake. I had a bad feeling about what was coming, and sadly, I was right. That's when Rachel dropped a huge lie on me, and it hit me hard. She pointed at me and said, "There he is, the one who assaulted me." My jaw dropped. She was accusing me of something terrible. I was stunned and immediately thought back to our argument a few days before. I asked her if that was why she was doing this, but my dad jumped in and yelled, "Shut your mouth and stop making excuses." I kept denying the accusation, but that's when the punches started. My whole family began beating me. It was brutal, far worse than anything I had ever experienced, even at school. They told me in no uncertain terms to pack up my few belongings and get out of the house immediately. They also made it clear I was lucky they weren't reporting me to the police. I kept saying I was innocent, but they told me to shut up. My family disowned me, all because of Rachel's lies. It was the worst day of my life. I was homeless. But despite everything they did to me, I held on. I made a life for myself. I showered at the college gym, washed my clothes at the laundromat, worked 2 jobs, and went to school full-time. Eventually, I saved enough to get my own place. I did it all by myself, with no help from anyone. Now, I'm 38, and I haven't spoken to my family since the day they beat me and threw me out. But today, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Rachel. It was from my parents' phone number, so I guess she's still living with them. Even though it had been years since we last spoke, I immediately recognized her voice, and I froze. Just hearing her voice brought back all the trauma. But something was different this time. Rachel's tone was softer. I asked her why she was calling, and she asked how I was doing, something she had never cared to ask before. Then she told me the real reason for her call. She said she was dying. That's right, Rachel has terminal cancer. I didn't say anything after she told me all that. She went on to say she was a single mom now, with Frank, who's 19, and another son, Tyler, who's 16. Then, out of nowhere, she apologized. She said that God was punishing her for lying about me and accusing me of assaulting her. I was shocked. She asked for my forgiveness, and I didn't know what to say. I told her I needed time to think and hung up the phone. My heart was racing. Not long after the call, she sent me a text explaining everything again and saying how sorry she was. She talked about how her sons would grow up without a mom and how she regretted being such a terrible person her whole life. I still haven't responded to her text, and I'm torn about what to do. Should I forgive her? The truth is, I still hate her deeply. What do you guys think I should do? What's up, everyone? Revenge Online here. We've got some big updates on this story, and honestly, that twist really took me by surprise. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another story. Here's the first update, and it's a short one. Hello, everyone. OP here with an update. I got a lot of great advice. Some people said I should forgive Rachel and move on. I get the idea that holding on to hate is just extra baggage. But others said that Rachel's illness isn't a good enough reason to forgive her for all she's done. My family is probably still as toxic as ever. After thinking it over, I made my decision. This might upset some of you, but I chose the path of revenge. I found Rachel's Facebook page and saw that her sons, Tyler and Frank, were on her friends list. I sent them screenshots of Rachel's confession. Then, I tracked down her ex-husband and sent him the same screenshots. Finally, I sent them to my parents and the rest of the family. I want everyone to know what kind of person Rachel really is. I should probably be more worried about the fallout from all this, but honestly, I don't care. I'll keep you all updated on what happens next. Update number 2. Good afternoon, everyone. OP here, and wow, do I have an update for you. Can you believe my parents actually called me today with a load of nonsense? It's been 17 years since we last spoke, and honestly, I had no desire to talk to them again. I should have known they would try to reach out after I dropped that bombshell about their golden child, Rachel. To my surprise, at first, Mom and Dad were pretty apologetic. They admitted that it was wrong to disown me just based on Rachel's lies without hearing my side of the story. I reminded them that they had a habit of doing that long before this whole incident even happened. I guess they expected me to be happier about their apology, but when I wasn't, they quickly changed the subject to Rachel's cancer. They said I was wrong to involve Rachel's kids and ex-husband and told me I should have waited longer to share the truth with the family. I was blunt and told them I didn't care. I reminded them that they should have thought about all this before they disowned me and ruined my life. I also made sure to bring up how they conveniently forgot about the time the whole family beat me up. I was furious. I hung up, hoping to never hear from them again. Update number 3. Hello, everyone. Today is a beautiful day, and I've got some big news to share with you. I got another phone call from my parents this morning. I hesitated to answer, but I figured it must be important if they were calling again, so I picked up. My parents were in tears, crying uncontrollably. They told me Rachel passed away this morning. But it's only been 5 days since she confessed her lies to me, and now she's gone. I know this might sound cold or heartless, but I didn't feel anything. Not a single thing. My parents asked why I wasn't saying anything, and I told them straight up, I don't care. They called me heartless and cruel for saying that about my own cousin, but I reminded them that they were the ones who had abandoned their only son. I could hear them starting to protest and scold me, but in that moment, I realized I had the power now, not them. I hung up the phone just like I did the day before. Rachel's gone, so at least she won't be around to mess with me anymore. But I feel like my family still doesn't get the message. They need to learn a lesson, and I don't want to sound mean, but I think a little more revenge is necessary to make sure they understand. So, I've come up with a plan, and I'll soon be back to explain what's next. Update number 4. Hey guys, OP here with another update. Today was amazing, everything went just as I planned. Let me get right to it and tell you what happened. It wasn't hard to find the details about Rachel's funeral. Honestly, I was surprised they were even having a funeral for her, considering what kind of person she was. But I found the information online and started preparing. I even rented a tuxedo to make sure I looked sharp. Of course, I wasn't invited to the funeral, so I decided to invite myself. I figured it would be a nice surprise for my dear family. After all, none of them had seen me in 17 years, and they never bothered to check how I was doing. Now it was time to show them who's in charge. I arrived at the funeral a little late, and the service had already started. When I walked through the church doors, I saw a surprisingly big crowd there to say goodbye to Rachel. That worked out well for me, more people to witness the scene I had planned. I walked straight up to the podium and told the preacher to step aside. People in the crowd started whispering, trying to figure out who I was. I heard someone say, "Is that?" They couldn't quite place me at first, but it was time to remind them. I gave my speech and I didn't hold back. I exposed my parents for all their neglect and abuse. Then I laid out every terrible thing Rachel had done to me over the years. I didn't care who was listening, even if there were kids in the crowd. They needed to know that their mother was a horrible person. I trashed my entire family to their faces and reminded them how they turned their backs on me when Rachel falsely accused me of assault. It felt good to finally say everything I'd held in for so long. I told them it was disgusting how they immediately believed that I did something so horrible to my own cousin without even hearing my side. That's when my father stood up and told me to shut up and leave. He said I was ruining the funeral and that no one in the room wanted to hear me spread lies about Rachel. Lies? It was almost laughable. Even after knowing the truth about Rachel, they were still defending her. Dad even threatened to call the police if I didn't leave. I'm not a violent person, but at that moment, I was ready to fight him. Then something unexpected happened. Tyler and Frank stood up. No one had asked them what they thought, and for the first time, they spoke out. They confirmed everything I said about Rachel. They shared how she neglected and abused them, spent all her money on drugs and alcohol, and didn't care for them at all. There was an uproar in the funeral hall. I could tell my family was shocked. I guess hearing it from Rachel's own children hit differently than hearing it from me, the family's black sheep. I left them there, arguing and grumbling amongst themselves. I had said what I needed to say, and I was done. I walked out of the funeral and headed back to my apartment. Final update. Hello, everyone. OP here with a final update. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for your supportive comments and advice. It really helped me get through all of this. I also wanted to share that I ended up adopting Tyler and Frank. After everything they went through growing up with Rachel and my family, I think they were relieved to see someone stand up and speak the truth at the funeral. The rest of the family wanted nothing to do with the boys, and they had nowhere to go after Rachel passed. Their father was in prison, and my parents refused to take them in because, in their eyes, the boys had disrespected their mother and brought shame to the family, as if they were some kind of royalty. But I'm glad to have them with me now, and we're moving forward together. Thanks again for all your support. I did the right thing by adopting Tyler and Frank. We've moved far away from the rest of the family, and we're living a great life now. Tyler and Frank don't act anything like their mother, and I'm proud to see them growing into great men. Thank you all for your support. The comment section wasn't happy with my family, and it was clear to everyone how toxic they were. Even when I stood up at the funeral and told the truth about Rachel, they didn't want to hear it, even though I had proof. It wasn't until Tyler and Frank confirmed everything, I said that people started to realize how abusive Rachel had been. In the end, I knew I couldn't let Tyler and Frank grow up in that toxic environment, so I took them in. A lot of people in the comment section thought that was the right thing to do, and I agree. Let me know your thoughts on today's story, guys. My name is Revenge Online, and I share stories like this every day. If you want to be a part of these daily stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. See you soon.
Please do something. I cried out in desperation, but both my mother-in-law and husband ignored me. They didn't even look at me as I stood there, covered in blood. They seemed more worried about the scary dog that had bitten me and whether the floor was dirty. Left with no choice, I called an ambulance myself and was taken away alone. I couldn't stop crying during the ride to the hospital. After a while, my husband called. He was yelling in a panic. "Hey, turn the ambulance around. My mother is." My name is Julie Andrews, and I'm 37 years old. 5 years ago, a friend dragged me to a mixer, a social gathering with civil servants. She insisted, "Julie, you're coming, right?" That's where I met my husband, Scott, who is 5 years younger than me. My dad is a judo instructor and my mom teaches physical education. I grew up in a family that was all about sports, with 2 older brothers who all have black belts in judo. This made me a bit of a tomboy. Scott, on the other hand, was completely different. When we first met, his shirt buttons were mismatched, and he stumbled over his words during the toast. He was a nice guy, not a bad person at all, but he seemed to try hard and still couldn't get things quite right. I found this side of Scott sweet, and it brought out my caring side. We went on a few dates, and it was actually me who suggested we start dating. Scott had a way of calming my naturally short temper. Before I knew it, I started thinking I wanted to be with him forever. On the first anniversary of our relationship, I proposed to him. I said, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. So let's get married. Tears filled his eyes as he replied, Julie, that's supposed to be my line. Thank you for everything. Let's continue to take care of each other. And that's how we decided to get married. When Scott first met my parents, he was completely nervous around my strict father and 2 brothers. My mom tried to calm him down, saying, there's no need to be scared, you know. But Scott replied loudly, yes, and his voice cracked, which made the whole family laugh. My father, though strict, said, he seems a bit unsure of himself, but I can tell he put a lot of thought into the gifts he brought. And it's clear he really loves Julie, which makes me happy. After meeting my family, it was time to meet Scott's family. He told me that his father had passed away from cancer 3 years ago. His parents had struggled with infertility, and after 6 years of trying, they finally had Scott. Normally, I wasn't the type to get nervous, but that day I felt really anxious about meeting his mother. I don't usually get nervous, but on this day, I was very anxious about meeting my mother-in-law. I couldn't stop worrying. What if she doesn't like me? What if I mess up when I greet her? What if she has an issue with our age difference? Just then, Scott, who usually isn't the most reassuring, said, don't worry, my mom is really kind. You'll find it easy to talk to her. She's famous in the neighborhood for always smiling. Hearing this made me feel a little better. He added, and there's no way anyone could dislike you, Julie. His words lifted my mood. When we arrived at his family home, we rang the doorbell. I introduced myself. Nice to meet you. Julie. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. His mother smiled warmly and said, oh, you must be Julie. No need to be so formal. Come on in. She was wearing a lovely dress and had a refined, gentle look. I was worried about the age difference, but when it came up, she said, age doesn't matter at all. I'm so happy that someone like you'll be Scott's wife. All my fears went away. She didn't care about the age difference at all and was enthusiastic about everything I said. I had a great time. Our conversation turned to a story about a poodle my mother-in-law once had. She showed me a picture and said, isn't it adorable? I had this dog when I was in elementary school. It was such a friendly and smart dog, but it passed away when it got older. Then my husband added, Mom, Julie isn't really fond of dogs. Shirley seemed surprised and said, Julie, you don't like dogs? I explained, yes, actually. Even though I'm a bit of a tomboy, I'm afraid of dogs. When I was a child, I was playing ball with my brother in the park, and a stray, scary dog bit my arm when I went to get the ball. I bled a lot and needed 5 stitches. Since then, it's been a traumatic experience, and I've been scared of dogs. Shirley responded, oh my, I didn't know that. I'm so sorry for talking about dogs when you're afraid of them. I quickly said, no. I'm sorry for worrying you. The poodle in the picture was really cute. Shirley smiled and said, thank you. On the way home, I told Scott, your mother is so beautiful, kind, and such a wonderful person. He smiled and replied, I know, right? My mom is always smiling and has such a gentle nature. I agreed, saying, she's a lovely mother. We kept talking about his mother excitedly. Then suddenly, my husband became serious. Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about, he said. You know how we visited my family home today? Yes, it was such a big house. I was really surprised, I replied. Exactly, he continued. When my dad was still alive, he designed it with my mom in mind, making sure everything was convenient for her. The house even has 4 children's rooms in case they had more kids, but since I'm an only child, they were never used. Now my mom is living there alone, and she finds it too big and lonely. So I was thinking, what if we live with her? I was shocked by his unexpected idea. My eyes widened in surprise. It's true, the house was really big, and my mother-in-law kept it spotless. Living in such a house would be amazing, but we're newlyweds, and it feels a bit too soon for that. After thinking for a moment, I said, your mother is a wonderful person, and the house is so beautiful that it feels like too much for me. But we just got married, right? I'd like to enjoy our newlywed life, just the 2 of us, for a little while longer. I see. You're right. I understand, he said. I'll let my mom know. Yes, I'm sorry. Please explain it to her gently. I felt a bit guilty towards Shirley, but I knew it was important to share my true feelings instead of just going along with everything. I was relieved that my husband seemed to understand and agree with me. Then our married life together began. Scott was still a bit clumsy, but he actively helped with house chores, and we were enjoying a happy and smooth life. However, recently, something has been bothering me a little. Oh, hello, Mom? Got it. I'm coming over now, Scott said on the phone. Your mom again? I asked. Yeah, the living room light bulb burned out. I'll go over and replace it. And off he went to his mom's house. Lately, it's been like this all the time. Mom bought a new computer, but she's having trouble setting it up, so I'm heading over to help. Or, Mom bought too many groceries at the supermarket, so she asked me to come pick her up. I'm going to help her out. Whether it was weekdays or weekends, the phone would ring, and Scott would head back to his mom's house more and more often. I started feeling a little upset, thinking that he could at least spend the weekends at home with me. But at the same time, I reminded myself that Scott is just a kind and thoughtful person who cares a lot about his mother. A month had passed since we got married, and just like when we were dating, we hadn't had any major arguments, and things were going smoothly. Today was Shirley's birthday. My husband and I had picked out a present and a cake for her, and we went to his parents' house. As soon as we walked in, a scary dog suddenly jumped out. What? I said, my eyes widening in surprise. There hadn't been a dog when we came for the wedding visit. Since I'm afraid of dogs, I quickly hid behind my husband. Shirley came out of the living room and said, "Oh, welcome. Mom, where did this scary dog come from?" Scott asked. Well, I was feeling lonely living by myself, so I got a dog recently. Isn't it cute? She said, smiling. The dog was small, a Welsh corgi. I see, I replied, still startled by the dog's sudden appearance. I forced a smile, even though I was scared. Without noticing my discomfort, Shirley brought the dog closer to me and said, "Come on, Julie, why don't you hold it?" I took a step back and said, I mentioned this when we came for the wedding visit, but I was bitten by a dog when I was younger, and I've been afraid of dogs ever since." I politely declined to hold the dog. "Oh, did you say that?" "I didn't know," she said, pretending not to remember. "But it's so cute. What a strange person you are." I noticed a slight smirk on her face, and for the first time, I wondered if Shirley was being sarcastic. After that day, whenever Scott said, "Mom wants to see you," or "Let's go visit my mom," I started declining. I still couldn't forget the smirk she gave me when she saw I was uncomfortable around the dog. A month later, after finishing work and coming home, I found my mother-in-law in the house. "What? Why are you here?" I asked, surprised. "Oh, welcome home," she greeted me cheerfully, as if everything was normal. She was in the kitchen, had opened the fridge, and was cooking. "Why did you come over so suddenly?" I asked. "My dear Scott said he wanted to eat my homemade stew, so I just had to come," she said, looking very happy as she hummed to herself. "Oh, I see." I tried to smile, but I felt tense, especially since her dog was in the living room. To make things worse, she had fed the dog, and it was licking clean my favorite antique plate. I had bought that plate at a flea market in Canada, and now the dog was licking it clean. Who could possibly be okay with this? I went to my room to put away my bags and coat. I told myself not to get upset since Shirley had come all this way. I took a deep breath to calm down and went back to the living room. To my horror, the dog had made a mess on the brand new carpet. The stain was bright yellow. Oh no, the dog messed up the carpet. I shouted in a panic, but Shirley didn't seem to care. "Oh dear, it made a mess right there, huh?" she said casually, not even bothering to scold the dog or clean it up. Knowing the stain would get worse if I didn't take care of it, I ended up cleaning it myself. I was usually calm, but this really frustrated me. Just then, I heard the door open, and my husband came home. The dog, hearing him, started barking loudly. Woof, woof. It barked until he came into the living room, and even the sound of the barking scared me. Once the dog saw it was my husband, it stopped, and I felt a bit of relief. The three of us sat down to eat the stew Shirley had made. Neither my husband nor Shirley bothered to put the dog in its cage, so it wandered around our feet, hoping for food. I felt tense and started trembling. Shirley noticed and said, "You really don't like dogs, do you, Julie? You look so scared. I brought the dog today to help you get over your fear." Bringing the dog here without asking, using my favorite plate, letting it mess up the carpet, and having it bark at me, how is any of this supposed to help me get over my fear? If anything, it made me hate dogs even more. In my mind, I was screaming, "If you really want to help, just put the dog in a cage or keep it away from me." But my husband didn't notice my discomfort at all. "Mom is so kind. She's really trying to help you, Julie," he said. I couldn't believe it. How was this kind? She was pretending to care, while actually making things worse for me. Then, to make things worse, my husband started to lecture me. "Julie, this isn't okay."
What?
"I'm the one at fault," I asked, shocked. "Mom has done all this for you, and yet you keep avoiding the dog. You won't even visit my parents' house because of the dog. You're not trying hard enough, Julie," my husband said. Since his mother was there, he started criticizing me more harshly than usual. I had no choice but to say, "I'm sorry," and apologize in front of my mother-in-law. I bit my lip, trying to hold back my frustration. After that, Shirley began coming to our house often, always bringing her dog. Each time, the dog would run around the house, making a mess. But Shirley never seemed to care or discipline the dog. These visits were stressing me out more and more. One day, I had enough. I gathered my courage and said, "Please, I've told you many times that I'm afraid of dogs. Can you stop bringing the dog here?" Shirley's face changed, and she suddenly looked angry. "I've been wondering," she snapped. "Are you using your fear of dogs as an excuse to avoid me, Julie? That's terrible." I was shocked and had no idea what she meant. But what surprised me even more was that my husband agreed with her. "Julie, that's too much. My mom has been thinking of you, and you've been avoiding her. That's really rude. Apologize to her." "Scott, Shirley, you both know I'm afraid of dogs, right? But you keep bringing the dog, and every time it makes a mess, I'm the one who has to clean it up. This is too much," I said, frustrated. Shirley frowned and said, "At least let me enjoy my time with the dog. You're too old to have kids anyway, so what's the harm?" I was stunned. "Is that what you really think?" I asked. "Isn't it true? You're already 37, and it's getting harder to have a baby at your age. But my son is only 32. He has his whole future ahead of him, but now he's stuck with an older, arrogant wife," she muttered. This was the same woman who once told me age didn't matter. Hearing her true feelings shocked me. I couldn't bear to have her around any longer, so I said, "Please, don't come here again." My eyes filled with tears, and maybe because of that, Shirley got even more upset. "How dare you? You really are an arrogant wife," she shouted before storming out with her dog. From that day on, I started feeling more and more resentment toward both my husband and Shirley. Ever since my husband defended her and blamed me, things between us had been tense, and we barely spoke to each other anymore. 2 weekends, my husband came to me with a serious look on his face. "Julie, I'm sorry," he began. "I was wrong too. I should have thought more about your feelings," Scott said. I felt relieved, thinking he finally understood how I felt. But then he added, "Let's go apologize to Mom now." "What? Why should we do that? Was I wrong that day?" I asked, confused. "It's not about being right or wrong. Don't make Mom angry.
Just apologize, please," he said.
In the end, my husband didn't understand anything. He didn't care about my feelings at all. He took me to his parents' house against my will. When we got there, Shirley was waiting for me, hands on her hips. Shirley, I'm sorry about the other day," I said, as my husband had told me to, just to calm her down. But then she said, "I'll forgive you if you hold the dog." That was it. I realized I couldn't reason with her. I had apologized, even though I wasn't wrong, and I had tried to meet her halfway many times. And this was her response? "As I've said before, I can't do that," I replied firmly, keeping my cool. Shirley got angry and forcefully pushed the dog toward me.
"Ah,
I cried out and instinctively pushed the dog away. But my scream startled the dog, and it bit my hand. It hurt so much, and my hand was quickly covered in blood. "Please do something," I begged my husband and Shirley. But Shirley just said, "Well, anyone would be scared by such a loud noise." Poor thing, focusing only on the dog. To my shock, my husband was more concerned about whether the floor was dirty. Neither of them cared about me. I felt disgusted. Meanwhile, my hand kept bleeding, and I had to shoo the dog away myself. I decided to call an ambulance. When the ambulance arrived, Shirley scoffed, "Oh, come on. You're being so dramatic over a dog bite," looking at me with a mocking expression. My husband, even as the ambulance showed up, didn't change. He was still checking the floor. Ignoring both of them, I got into the ambulance, pressing my bleeding hand. I was filled with anger, pain, and sadness. I couldn't stop crying as I sat alone in the ambulance. For some reason, my husband called me while I was being taken to the hospital. I thought maybe he was finally worried about me, so I answered the phone. But instead, he said, "Mom got bitten by the dog. You're still nearby, right? Tell the driver to come back to our house." Hearing those words, I felt my feelings for my husband start to disappear. I didn't care anymore what happened to him or his mother. Let them deal with it on their own. I quietly hung up the phone. When I got to the hospital and the doctor checked my wound, he said it was deeper than expected and I would need to stay in the hospital. Since I wasn't ready for this, I called my parents and asked them to bring some things for me. After a while, my parents arrived. "Julie, are you okay?" they asked, their faces full of worry as they looked at me lying in bed. "I'm sorry for making you worry. It still hurts a little, but I'm okay for now," I replied. "I see. When we heard you were taken to the hospital, we were really worried." "What happened?" they asked. I told them everything about how my mother-in-law and husband had acted. My mom hugged me and said, "You did well." I had been feeling so alone, but just being able to talk to them made me feel better. However, my dad was furious after hearing the story. "I will never forgive them," he said angrily. He looked like he was about to explode with rage. The next day, my husband called. Scott was also furious. "What the hell is going on? The police just showed up at our house, and now my mom is being questioned." "I don't know. Maybe the hospital reported it. They asked me how I got hurt, so I told them it was your mom's dog that bit me." "What? What if my mom gets arrested? This is your fault for being careless in the first place." "Yeah, I figured you'd blame me," I said, "but I don't care anymore. Actually, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. Let's get a divorce." "What? We've only been married for 4 months. Getting divorced so soon? Everyone at work and our family will laugh at us. It's embarrassing." "I'm not divorcing you," he said angrily and hung up the phone. 2 weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital. My parents came to pick me up, and I decided to go back to their house with them. After that, I talked to a lawyer about the divorce and asking for alimony from my husband since there was no way to reason with him. Even though my husband kept calling me, I ignored all his calls. Eventually, after missing another call, I got a text message from him saying, "I'm at the cafe near your parents' house. You better come." If he really wanted to talk, he could have come to the house, but he didn't. It was clear he didn't want to face my parents. With no other choice, I went to the cafe. The first thing my husband said was, "I'm not getting a divorce." "I don't care what you want. I am getting a divorce. There's no way I want to stay with you or your mother after everything that's happened," I replied. "Don't speak badly of my mother. This is your fault. You avoided my mom because you said you were afraid of dogs, and the dog bit you because you screamed," he said, continuing to lecture me. Just then, my father and 2 brothers arrived at the cafe. Before coming, I had told my father about the message from my husband, and he had called my brothers to come along. Surrounded by 3 large men who practiced judo, Scott's voice shook as he said, "Oh, father-in-law, brothers-in-law." The way he cowered was almost funny. My father spoke up. "How dare you hurt my daughter? Our sister wants a divorce. You're going to give it to her, right?" They all stared at him with intense eyes. Terrified, Scott stuttered, Yes." My father and brothers kept pushing him until he finally agreed to the divorce and to pay alimony. I handed him the divorce papers I had already prepared and said, "Sign these. We're getting divorced." Reluctantly, my husband signed the papers, and I left the cafe. Thanks to the support of my father and brothers, I successfully divorced my husband and received alimony from him. My lawyer also demanded compensation for my former mother-in-law for my injuries, and I got alimony from her as well. Later, I heard that my ex-mother-in-law had been questioned by the police about the dog bite. She got a strict warning and had to give up the dog. Apparently, she spoiled the dog so much that it started thinking it was stronger than humans. After it bit me, it also bit her, and she ended up with a broken wrist. Now, she's living uncomfortably with limited use of her wrist. My ex-husband moved back to his parents' house. With his mother unable to use her wrist properly, she would ask, "Scott, can you help with the laundry? Can you cook for me?" But since Scott had never done housework before, he couldn't do anything on his own. This caused constant fights between them, with my ex-husband blaming her, saying, "It's your fault this happened in the first place." They began arguing regularly. Meanwhile, rumors spread among his relatives and coworkers that he got divorced because he treated me badly. His pride was hurt, and well, it served him right. I was the one who started those rumors. While I was in the hospital, I shared the story with one of his coworkers whose contact info I had. This coworker was known for loving gossip, so I purposely told them. It worked perfectly. The coworker spread the word about my ex-husband's behavior, calling him abusive, a mama's boy, and someone who had been divorced. It made him an easy target at work, and honestly, he deserved it. With the support of my parents and brothers, I'm now living a happy life. How did you like this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video. My name is Mary, and I'm in my early 51s. I've been married to James for 21 years, and our life is mostly peaceful and happy. Even though we don't have children, we're content. James is 3 years older than me, and he works at a regular company. He hasn't really changed much over the years, but because I only work part-time, we have a little extra money to spend on nice things. Our marriage has been steady, without any big problems. But then, something small happened that shook up our calm life. It all started when I learned that my father had passed away and I inherited his apartment. After James and I got married, my father moved into a new, modern 3-bedroom apartment. Meanwhile, James and I lived in my childhood home, a 5-bedroom house full of memories. My father had given it to us as a wedding gift, and he was happy for us to start our life there. I was so touched by his gesture. When my father passed away, I inherited his apartment. I loved that place, so I decided to rent it out right away. But one day, during a conversation with James's family, an unexpected suggestion came up. Someone said, "Rachel and her kids are living in a small place. How about they move into Mary's 5-bedroom house?" Rachel is James's younger sister. She's divorced and raising 2 kids in a 3-bedroom apartment, which is probably a bit cramped for them. To be honest, my relationship with Rachel hasn't been great. Every time we meet, she makes little sarcastic comments about the fact that James and I don't have kids yet. James and I got married just before we turned 32, and ever since then, Rachel has been making these remarks. As I got older, her comments became even more cutting, like, "You're over 32 and still no kids?" Or, "Don't people see you as less of a woman without children?" What hurt me the most was something she said after my father passed away. She looked at me and said, "It's a shame your father never got to see a grandchild." That really shocked me and left me feeling numb. Rachel is actually 5 years older than me, so instead of a younger sister-in-law, she feels more like an older one. We've always tried to be kind to her and treat her like family, but those remarks really stung. I naturally built a wall in my heart against Rachel. I'm an only child, and my father was my only family. Losing him was hard enough, but Rachel's words made it even worse. Some time had passed since my father's death, and I hadn't seen Rachel for a while. Then, out of nowhere, my mother-in-law brought up something unexpected. She said, "Rachel is willing to pay $1,000 a month in rent." When I saw the smug look on her face, I was too shocked to say anything. The apartment we lived in was old, but we took good care of it, and it was still in good shape. There was a big mall nearby, and transportation was easy with buses and trains. If we rented out the apartment, I thought it would go for at least $2,500 a month. But $1,000? That was unbelievable. Didn't they know the going rate for this area? Renting out such a spacious 5-bedroom apartment for only $1,000 a month was ridiculous. Maybe they thought I had agreed, because I didn't say anything right away. My mother-in-law seemed really excited about the idea and said, "You already have another apartment, right? You can live there instead. Even if you don't renew the lease, Rachel and her kids can move in, so it's all fine." "How long is the contract?" James seemed excited too and added, "That's a great idea. The place your father lived is new and perfect for just the two of us." At this point, the conversation was moving forward without even considering our thoughts, and I started to panic. I couldn't help but blurt out, "Isn't there an option for all of us to live together in this apartment?" James's parents had a big house, and they were the only ones living there. They even had rooms for both James and Rachel, so I thought it would be fine if they all moved in. After all, they said they wanted a bigger place. Normally, before making decisions like this, you talk with the family. But moving in with James's parents would mean Rachel's kids would have to change schools, and they seemed worried about the cost and hassle of getting new school uniforms and gym clothes. I didn't want to directly say I didn't want to rent the apartment to Rachel in front of my mother-in-law, but I said, "This is my hometown. I can't just leave so easily." I left their house, but my mother-in-law said, "You don't have to decide right away," which made me feel like she wasn't giving up. When I got home, I asked James, "This apartment is special to us. Why are you so quick to decide to leave?" He seemed surprised and said, "Well, it's not a single-family home." I was shocked by his answer. Maybe because he grew up in a house, an apartment didn't feel like a real home to him. But I wished he could at least understand my feelings and apologize. Instead, I felt upset. I raised my voice and said, "This is my home, my apartment. Why are you making decisions without asking me?" James looked upset and replied, "We've been married for 21 years. Why are you saying my apartment? It's our apartment." I could hear the frustration in his voice. I wished he could understand how much this apartment meant to me as my special home. If he had hesitated about renting it to his sister, I might not have felt so hurt by his words. But in that moment, I felt deeply hurt. We tried to calmly talk about it many times after that, but it was difficult. James didn't seem to understand my feelings at all. He started calling me things like money-minded, stubborn, and selfish. As time went on, the distance between us stayed the same. During this period, I kept getting messages from my mother-in-law asking if we had made any progress on moving. The pressure from both my mother-in-law and James, who didn't seem to understand my perspective, wore me down. I felt like I was nearing my breaking point. Then one day, I was shocked to receive an email from Rachel. She wrote, "Why are you two, without kids, holding onto such a big space? You don't need it. Just move out." I hadn't heard from Rachel since we started talking about the apartment, and now here she was, telling me to leave. I never imagined she would send such a blunt message. Reading her email, I reflected on everything I had been through and felt a wave of self-doubt. The idea of divorce crossed my mind several times. Each time, I tried to calm myself, but I was reaching my limit. I decided to visit the local government office to start the process for a divorce. I also reached out to a specific place to understand the next steps. A few days later, with a clearer mindset, I went to the court. After checking, I found out that both the apartment we lived in and the one I was renting out were in my name. It was legally mine. Confirming this gave me the strength to confront my situation with James. I thought about what I needed to do next and decided we needed to talk seriously. I told James, "I've said this many times, this is my house. I can't stand the idea of renting it to Rachel. I don't want to give my home to someone who treats me poorly. Please talk to your mother and Rachel about this." James's face darkened like he was tired of the conversation. I had already told him about all the hurtful things Rachel had said to me and how much I disliked her behavior. I wanted him to understand my feelings, but instead, he sided with Rachel, saying, "Rachel is right." It was then that I realized how things had truly changed. I could have gone through with a divorce at that moment, ending the pain I was feeling. But I couldn't bring myself to end a 21-year relationship so quickly. Deep down, I was ready for divorce if James rejected what I had to say. Still, I thought to myself, maybe I'm being too sensitive about Rachel. Maybe she isn't being as condescending as I think, and I'm just exaggerating things. James didn't get it, though. He said, "I really don't understand why you feel this way." His words hurt. Was I the only one feeling like this? I asked him, "If that's how you feel, will you sign this?" And I handed him the divorce papers. James looked shocked but quickly replied, "Do you really want to end our relationship over something so small?" He didn't understand that it wasn't a small issue to me. "I'm serious," I said, looking him in the eyes. "I care about Rachel too, but lately, things between us have changed. I don't feel the same love anymore, so I'm leaving." My heart ached when I saw how casual James was about it, smiling like it wasn't a big deal. It made me feel like he didn't understand how deeply this was affecting me, and I felt tears start to well up. I just wanted him to leave sooner rather than later. James then said in a softer tone, "Maybe Rachel and my mother don't really want to get along with you. Have you ever thought that because you always focus on yourself, our relationship has suffered?" His words stung again. We had always misunderstood each other, even while trying to make things work. "I think it's impossible to fix our relationship now, no matter how much we talk. I can't imagine a future with you anymore," I said calmly. "If you can't understand my feelings, then we'll have to go through with the divorce." James looked both surprised and sad as he asked, "Do you really feel that way?" Then he left the house without saying anything else. He didn't sign the divorce papers, and he left all his belongings behind. A few days later, James came back. He looked sad and unsure. "What should we do from here?" he asked quietly. I could tell he thought I might forgive him if he acted humble, but my mind was already made up. There was nothing left to discuss. "If you agree to the divorce, sign the papers," I said. "If not, we'll have to take legal action. And by the way, I've decided to let go of this house." I had been thinking about selling it for a while. The day I went to get the divorce papers, I talked to Mr. Eric, an old friend of my father's. I'd known him for years. When I was a child, Mr. Eric was always by my father's side until the very end. He even attended my father's funeral and gave me his business card, telling me to reach out if I ever needed help. The card had the details of his law firm. Thanks to Mr. Eric, I was able to get help from a legal advisor to deal with my father's inheritance. When I told Mr. Eric about my situation, he gave me honest and helpful advice. He explained the importance of checking property ownership, dealing with divorce complications, and other tips that helped protect me. After James left the house for a while, I decided to sell the apartment. I quickly contacted real estate agents to start the process. I also informed Mr. Eric about my rocky relationship with James and how he refused to sign the divorce papers. Asked for his help in handling the divorce. When James found out I was selling the apartment, he was shocked and angry. "You always said this was our family home. Are you really going to sell such an important place? After all the concern you had about Rachel, you're being selfish," he said. But his words didn't affect me anymore. I looked him straight in the eyes and asked, "Do you have anything else to say?" James seemed surprised but quickly began arguing. "Why would you make such a big decision on your own? The apartment may be in your name, but after a divorce, there should be a division of property. This place belongs to both of us, right?" James was clearly emotional and desperate, but I calmly smiled and responded, "Actually, this apartment has been in my name since before we got married. I checked with my lawyer, and anything owned before marriage isn't part of the property division." Selling the apartment was difficult, but I didn't want to hold on to painful memories in this home. With the advice from Mr. Eric about property laws, I decided selling was the best choice. When James realized the truth, his attitude changed quickly. "I'm sorry," he said. "This place means a lot to you, but it hasn't been sold yet, right? Please reconsider. Let's give it another try. I'll talk to Rachel and Mom. Just stop the divorce and the sale of the apartment." As I listened to him plead, I found myself wondering why I had stayed with him for 21 long years. I was shocked that I had chosen someone like him. "Don't try to act nice now. When we were together, You never stood by my side. The idea of starting over with you is impossible, so please leave. We both need to move on. He wasn't easily convinced, and this created a big gap between us. But after going through all the necessary steps, I was finally able to end our relationship. It felt like the start of a new chapter in my life. At first, being alone seemed scary, but I realized it wasn't as bad as I thought. Now I live in a new 3-bedroom apartment, living life the way I want. My mother is with me, and even though he's gone, I'm fine. Everything is okay. My husband once coldly said, "You're not needed here." That shocked me. I had been sending $3,100 every month to his parents, but it didn't matter to him. Then, to make things worse, my mother-in-law added, "A wife who can't do proper housework isn't needed," with a cold smile, almost as if she was happy to see me go. Realizing there was no point in trying to please these people anymore, I decided to leave. With a calm smile, I replied, "If that's what you think, then I'll go." My husband looked shocked. My name is Lauren, and I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I met my husband Michael through a blind date set up by a friend. He was friendly and outgoing, and we hit it off quickly. We got married, and now we've been together for 3 years. We don't have any children yet. Before we got married, Michael lived with his mother. When we got married, he suggested building a new house on his family's property. He said, "I'm worried about my mom living alone. I want to be with her, but I also want us to have our own life together. I think this is the best idea." I asked, "But won't we have to get a mortgage for the house?" Michael reassured me, "The house will be paid for with the inheritance my father left me. We won't need a mortgage, and the land is free. The house will be in my name, and we can just support my mom with monthly payments. What do you think? Does that sound okay?" I wondered, "Aren't you worried about your mom's finances?" Michael replied, "We'll be helping her, and she has income from her part-time job and her pension, so everything will be fine." It seemed like a good plan, and Michael even said, "When you work late, my mom can help with the housework. It will make things easier for you." We would live in separate houses, but on the same property. I was excited about starting our new life together and building our dream home. Having help with housework during busy times seemed perfect. But later, I realized how naive I had been. In the beginning, our marriage was wonderful. We were both busy with work, but the house was easy to maintain, and everything seemed fine. My mother-in-law had her part-time job and didn't visit us too often. We shared the living expenses, and things felt balanced. One day, though, Michael brought up a new idea. He said, "I'll take care of all the household expenses, so can you transfer the regular payment to Mom every month? I want you to handle that." I was surprised and asked, "How much will it be?" He said, "Maybe about $2,200 a month." But when I did the math, I realized $2,200 was less than what we had been sending. So, without telling Michael, I decided to continue sending $2,800 a month to his mom. That amount took a big chunk out of my paycheck, but with other expenses like utilities, groceries, and medical bills, Michael was still covering most of the costs. His salary went into our joint account, and from there I made the payments and added the rest to our savings. This arrangement worked for about a year. However, when my mother-in-law quit her part-time job and started visiting more often, things began to change. One day, she said, "I'm getting older, so I decided to quit my job and take it easy." Michael responded, "That's okay, Mom. You don't need to worry anymore. We're here for you." "Thank you, Michael. You've always been so kind," she said. At first, it was nice to see them getting along. But then she started to criticize the way I kept the house. "It looks like you haven't been cleaning properly. There's dust everywhere. This is unacceptable." I apologized. "I'm really sorry. I've been busy with work and haven't been able to keep up with everything." "That's just an excuse," she said. "You're living in Michael's house, so the least you can do is take care of the basic chores. And I've heard you take shortcuts with cooking, too. Is that true?" "I sometimes make simple meals when I come home late from work, but I still do my best," I explained. Then she said something that really hurt. "Maybe it was a mistake choosing you as Michael's wife. After all these years, the fact that you still don't have children is also a problem." Her words stung, and I realized that things had taken a serious turn for the worse. I felt like not having children wasn't entirely my fault, but arguing about it would only cause more problems. Originally, my mother-in-law had promised to help with household chores when things got tough, especially since we were living on the same property. However, it seemed both Michael and my mother-in-law had forgotten that promise. Now, whenever she was around, she constantly criticized me, so I decided to just ignore her comments. Amid all this, a bigger issue arose. Our joint account balance was getting low because Michael's salary hadn't been deposited for 5 months. I confronted him, asking, "Why hasn't your salary been deposited?" What he said next shocked me. He had quit his job and was looking for a new one. I thought he had been going to work every day, but he had actually been job hunting. "Why did you quit without telling me?" "This is serious," I said. "I'm sorry, I feel bad about it," Michael replied. My boss was always on my case, nagging me for every little mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, right? But he acted like I was the only one. Michael explained that a mistake he made caused the company a big loss, and while most bosses would give a warning, his didn't. I understood that his work environment was tough, but since he had already quit, we needed to figure out what to do next. "Have you found any new job prospects?" I asked. "The problem is, I can't find a job that matches my skills," he said. "At this point, shouldn't you just take a job, even if it's not ideal?" "We can't afford to be too picky right now," I suggested. But Michael insisted. "No, I want to choose carefully for my next job, where I plan to stay until retirement." "What about our finances?" I asked. "Well, you're working too, so you can help support us for a while, right?" he replied, as if it were no big deal. I realized he wasn't going to change his mind, so I decided to endure until he found another job. But with our income so low, after sending money to my in-laws, there was barely anything left. We had to dip into our savings, which were almost gone. To make up for this, I decided to work more hours to increase my income. Luckily, my workplace valued me, and they agreed to let me work overtime. However, when I returned home late, my mother-in-law would often be waiting for me, ready to criticize. I couldn't help but wonder, how did it come to this? "I can't believe a daughter-in-law doesn't do any housework," my mother-in-law said angrily. "I'm sorry, it's because of work," I tried to explain. Making excuses, going out to play, and then asking Michael for more money? "I need money for living expenses and the remittances. My salary alone isn't enough," I said. Hearing this, my mother-in-law got even angrier. "Complaining about just $2,800? You live in Michael's house for free and don't even do any chores." Unbelievable. It was shocking to me that she thought $2,800 was nothing. I worked hard to earn that money. It seemed like she took the monthly payments for granted and didn't appreciate their value. She added, "Because you don't do the housework, I have to, or Michael suffers." It's hard dealing with such an incompetent daughter-in-law. Even though she acted like she did all the work, my mother-in-law often bought ready-made meals from the store and only did laundry for herself and Michael. The kitchen was always left messy, with dirty dishes everywhere. Michael and my mother-in-law always had their meals prepared, but not for me. I was usually told to eat whatever was left over. Michael would just relax in front of the TV while I dealt with my mother-in-law's harsh words. Over time, my feelings for my husband started to fade. His job search wasn't going well, and he was too proud to apply to anything less than top companies. A year had passed, and he still hadn't found a job. He just spent his days doing nothing. "Hey, if this keeps up, we're going to run out of savings. Can't you get a part-time job to help with the bills?" I asked him. Michael glared at me and said sharply, "Why should I get a part-time job? This house isn't even in your name, it's mine. You're just living here and can't even take care of me properly, so of course you have to pay the bills." I felt the future was looking bleak. I was paying for everything, our living expenses and the remittances to his mother, but there was a limit to how much I could earn. Remittances? It's just $2,800. Stop nagging me. If you don't like it, leave my house, he said angrily, hitting the table before walking out of the room. Michael dismissed the amount I worked hard to earn, calling it just $2,800. Our relationship had never been more strained. Then, unexpectedly, some good news came. Michael had a chance to get a job at a company run by his mother's friend. While the salary wasn't as high as his old job, I was just thankful he would be working again. The trial period was set for 5 months. Michael grumbled, "I don't think this company is the right fit for my skills, but it's hard to say no since my mom introduced me. As long as you're willing to work, that's what matters. Do your best and aim for full employment," I replied. I never imagined that Michael's new job would cause more problems. At first, he left for work every morning with energy, but after a month, things changed. He started coming home late, and sometimes he didn't come home at all. His jacket smelled like a woman's perfume that I didn't recognize. On top of that, he stopped contributing his salary to our household and even started withdrawing money from our joint account without asking me, while still sending the monthly remittance to his mother. I decided to stop putting my salary into the joint account, which made Michael furious. He confronted me, asking, "Why aren't you putting money in the account? The balance is almost zero. Where is your salary going? You're not paying for the living expenses. Tell me how you're using the money." I told him, "That's not fair. Am I the only one earning and managing our household? If you contribute, I will too." Michael shot back, "This house is mine. It's only natural for you to contribute." I was shocked by how he expected me to use my earnings for his spending, pay the remittances to his mother, and cover all the household costs. I also started to suspect he was having an affair, though I didn't have proof yet. I decided to investigate. Since I couldn't afford to hire a private investigator, I had to do it myself. One night, while Michael was asleep, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone. I found messages with a woman named Julie, and the content was shocking. The messages said things like, "I really enjoyed our date today. I wish we could be together forever. And, would you consider marrying me? I'll get rid of my wife. Wait for me, can't wait to start our life in a new home." I took screenshots and saved the messages to my phone. I then decided to find out who Julie was. But before I could act on it, I came home from work one day to find bags piled up at the entrance. "What's all this?" I asked. Michael replied coldly, "I've decided to live with my mom instead of you, since you don't do the housework. You made this decision without talking to me? This is my house too. You can't just make decisions like this," I said. He responded, "You have no right to complain. Since I'm paying for the remittances and living expenses, I can decide what happens here. It's better with my mom around, so you should leave." To make matters worse, my mother-in-law also chimed in, saying, "A wife who doesn't do housework is useless," smiling like she was happy to see me go. At that moment, I realized it was pointless to keep trying with these people. I made my decision in that moment. "First, please sign this," I said, pulling out the divorce papers I had prepared from my bag and handing them to Michael. Confused, he asked, "When did you prepare this?" "The day you told me to leave the house. I got them right after you said that," I replied calmly. Michael was surprised, but eventually he agreed and signed the papers. I signed them as well and said, "I'll submit these to the city office. I'll arrange for a moving company to get my things out as soon as I find a new place. I want you out as soon as possible." My mother-in-law yelled at me, but I ignored her. I packed the essentials into a bag and headed to my parents' house. They were surprised by my sudden arrival, but they welcomed me with open arms, understanding that something was wrong. The next day, I took some time off from work and began to take action. First, I submitted the divorce papers to the city office. Then, I started looking for a lawyer to help with the divorce process and any compensation I could claim. I also began searching for a new place to live. It was a busy time, but I felt a sense of fulfillment as I moved forward with my life. I found a nice, modern apartment perfect for a single person and hired a moving company to help with the move. On the day of the move, I returned to the house while Michael was at work, but his mother was there. The movers took my furniture, appliances, and other belongings, piece by piece. "You're taking everything? The house will be so empty," she said. "These are all the things I bought when we got married. I used my savings to get the furniture and appliances. Since the house is in Michael's name, these items are mine," I explained. She couldn't argue and was clearly frustrated. After moving into my new, luxury apartment, I started enjoying my independence. I was able to use all my income for myself, and thanks to my hard work and overtime, I got promoted and my salary increased. Life went on like this for about 5 months. Then I started getting a lot of calls from my mother-in-law. I regretted not blocking her, but eventually I gave in and answered one of her many calls. "Hello, Lauren, can we talk?" she said. "What do you want?" I asked, tired of her persistence. "Please, can you come back?" she pleaded. "What?" "I thought you wanted me to leave." "I'm sorry. I've thought about it and reflected on everything," she replied. She wanted me to start sending her $2,800 again, just like before. I couldn't believe how selfish she was. She explained that Michael's affair at work had been exposed, and he couldn't get a regular job anymore, only part-time work. He and Julie had started living together, but Julie didn't like living with his mother, so she moved back to her old home. Without the money I used to send, she was struggling to survive on her pension. "I have nothing to do with you anymore. I won't send you any money," I said firmly. Then I blocked her number and also blocked Michael's. I didn't want any more contact with either of them. But a few days later, Michael showed up outside my workplace. "Lauren, I'm sorry. Can we start over?" "I'm in trouble," he said, clearly desperate. I was shocked to see him there. He explained that living with Julie hadn't worked out because she couldn't do housework, and after the affair became public, he felt uncomfortable at work and quit. Their relationship fell apart because of their financial struggles and constant arguments, and Julie had left him. "It's too late," I told him. "I don't want to see you again. If you try to ambush me like this again, I'll call the police." He shouted, "Wait," as I walked away, but I ignored him and went home. Later, with the help of my lawyer, I received $50,000 in compensation, and Julie paid me an additional $210,000. I heard that Michael was now working several part-time jobs to pay off his debts and had even resorted to shady ways of getting money. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law had gone back to working part-time and was living frugally. They were constantly blaming each other for their problems. Julie had started working night shifts to pay off her debts after quitting her job and breaking up with Michael. As for me, I've adopted a little dog and am enjoying peaceful, happy days in my new apartment, looking forward to whatever life has in store next. The new car was shiny and red, sitting in my parents' driveway like it belonged in a movie. I held the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white, while Lauren spun around the car, squealing like she'd just hit the jackpot. Maybe she had, with my money. My name's Jacqueline, and I just watched my sister steal the future I worked so hard for. "Isn't she beautiful?" Lauren said, running her freshly manicured fingers over the car's hood. I got such a great deal. The salesman basically gave it to me. I stepped out of my plain BMW, still wearing my work clothes after a 10-hour shift at the financial firm. My phone buzzed again, probably another alert about my bank account being overdrawn. I'd been ignoring those messages, hoping it was some kind of mistake. "Lauren," I said, trying to stay calm. "Where did you get the money for this?" She flipped her styled hair, which looked just like Mom's. "Oh, don't start the lecture. Mom and Dad helped me figure it out. Right, guys?" Our parents stood behind her, smiling and holding champagne glasses. Mom gave me that look, the one that said, "Please don't ruin the mood." "She needed a reliable car, sweetheart," Mom said, walking over. "We just used that emergency account you set up for the family." My heart dropped. That wasn't an emergency fund. That was my house down payment. $50,000. Everything I had saved. "Don't be so dramatic," Lauren said, rolling her eyes. "You're good with money. You'll save it again. And you always say family comes first." "Family comes first," I said, pulling out my phone and showing her my bank balance. "You left me with $150. And you didn't even ask me." Dad cleared his throat. "Now, Jacqueline, your sister has job interviews coming up. She needs to make a good impression." I laughed bitterly. "What interviews? The ones after the 3 jobs she quit this year? Or the degree she never finished?" "That's not fair." Lauren burst into tears, right on cue. "Mom, she's being mean," she cried. Mom quickly wrapped her arms around her. "Jacqueline, please. You know your sister's been going through a hard time. We need to support her. You've always been the strong one." "The strong one?" The responsible one. The one who paid the bills, kept the secrets, fixed everything. I had been doing that for years. I was 14 years old, helping Lauren get ready for school, while Mom slept off another headache. "You're right," I said quietly as I took out my phone. "I am the strong one." Mom smiled. "I knew you'd understand. And I'm also the one whose name is on all the family bank accounts," I added, dialing the bank. "The one who's been paying off Dad's credit cards since he retired early. The one who used her savings as backup for your emergency loan." Dad froze with his champagne glass halfway to his mouth. "What are you doing?" "Yes, hello," I said into the phone. "This is Jacqueline Mathau. I'd like to close account number 556148 right away." "Yes, I understand it will affect other accounts. That's what I want." Jacqueline stopped. Mom tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back. "You can't do this," she said. "Actually, I can. It's my money." I looked straight at Lauren. "Enjoy the car, sis. I hope it was worth it." "You're just jealous," she yelled as I walked to my car. "Jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. That I'm living my best life while you're stuck being boring." I stopped, my hand on the car door. "You know what's funny about karma, Lauren? It doesn't always wait. Sometimes it shows up right away, when someone deserves it." "What does that mean?" she snapped. I smiled as I got into my car. "You'll see in about 96 hours, give or take, when those credit cards stop working." In my rearview mirror, I saw Dad frantically making calls while Mom hugged Lauren, who was crying. They looked just like the perfect family photo on their wall, Mom and Dad on either side of their favorite daughter. The photo I paid for last Christmas. Just like I paid for everything else. Not anymore. I pulled over a couple blocks away, hands still shaking, and called someone else. "Scott, it's me. Remember when you told me to stop helping them? Well, I finally did something big." He picked up right away. "About time. Want to grab a drink and tell me everything?" I looked back at my parents' house. Lauren's shiny new car still sat in the driveway, glowing in the sunset. "Yes," I said. "And bring your laptop. We're going to need it." As I drove away, the sun dipped behind me. I was done being their backup plan. Let Lauren enjoy her little kingdom made of credit. It was about to fall. They say revenge is best served cold. But I was just getting started. "For days," Scott said, sliding his laptop across the bar. "That's how long the system takes to close the accounts and start the chain reaction." I stared into my gin and tonic, the ice clinking gently. I slowly moved the drink in my hand. "They've called 25 times since yesterday," I said. I stopped counting the texts. "Let me see," Scott said, scrolling through my phone. He read some messages out loud. "Jacqueline, please call us right away. It's an emergency. Your sister is crying herself sick. We raised you better than this." "Oh, that's rich," Scott muttered. "Did they really raise me better?" I said, taking another sip. "You know what I remember from growing up? Making Lauren's lunch while Mom was lying down. Helping Dad with the checkbook when I was 14 because he couldn't figure out why the account was always empty. Being told I couldn't go to the college I wanted because Lauren needed braces. And now," Scott said, typing quickly on his laptop, "they took your house down payment." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Look at this. They've been taking money from your linked accounts for years. Small amounts, $30 here, $60 there. But it adds up." Even with the dim bar lights, I could see the long list of transactions growing on a screen. "They thought I wouldn't notice," I said, "because I never did before." My phone buzzed again. Mom's name popped up on the screen. "You should answer it," Scott said. "They need to know this isn't a game anymore." I took a deep breath and picked up the call. "Hello?" "Jacqueline." Mom's voice was shaking. "The bank called. They're saying something about credit lines being canceled and accounts frozen." "What did you do?" "Exactly what I told you I'd do," I said. "I closed my accounts." But your father's credit cards aren't working. We have bills to pay. Lauren needs." "Lauren needs." I cut her off. "What about what I need, Mom? Like the house I've been saving for since I was 24. "That's different," she said quickly. "We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other," I said. "We didn't steal," she shouted. "We borrowed. You know we'll pay you back." I laughed. "Will you?" Because I looked at Dad's credit report. I'm still listed as an authorized user. He's maxed out on 7 cards. And I've been making the minimum payments on them for 3 years. Silence. Then she whispered, "Jacqueline, please just come over. We can talk about this." "Sure," I said, finishing my drink. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Scott raised an eyebrow. "You're really going?" "They need to see my face," I said, grabbing my purse. "When their world finally falls apart. You coming?" 20 minutes later, I walked into my parents' living room. Lauren was on the couch, her mascara running down her face. Dad was pacing near the window, phone to his ear. "The bank won't move," he said as he hung up. "They're calling in all the credit lines by Sunday." "Something about unlinked collateral?" "That would be my savings account," I said, sitting down and crossing my legs. The one Lauren emptied for her shiny new car. "This isn't funny," Lauren shouted. "They're saying I could lose the car. Do you know how embarrassing that would be?" "Almost as embarrassing," I replied, "as having to tell my real estate agent I lost the down payment for my future home." I kept my voice calm. Or maybe it's just as embarrassing as realizing my family has been using me like their own ATM for years. "We never wanted to hurt you," Mom said, crying. "It's just things have been tight since your father retired at 56 with no savings." After I told him it was a terrible idea, I added. Dad's face turned red. "Now listen here, young lady." "No, you listen," I said, standing up. "For years, I've cleaned up your messes, paid your bills, and kept your secrets. And how do you thank me? By helping Lauren steal the one thing I've been saving for, my house." "But you're so good with money," Lauren cried. "You can save it again." "You're right. I am good with money," I said, walking toward the door. "That's why I'm cutting you all off. For good." "You can't do this to us," Mom yelled, grabbing my arm. I gently moved her hand away. Parents are supposed to protect their children, not use them like a money backup. And they definitely don't steal their dreams just to fund another child's bad choices. "Jacqueline, please," Dad said, his voice shaking. "Check your mail tomorrow," I said as I opened the door. "The bank is sending official letters about your defaulted accounts." "Oh, and Lauren might want to keep that car in the garage. Repo men work at night." I closed the door behind me with a soft click. Outside, Scott was waiting in his car, the engine running. "You okay?" he asked as I buckled in. I looked up and saw my mom in the window, already on the phone, probably calling her sister to ask for money. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be. For the first time in my life, I will be." "They're outside again," Scott said, looking out my apartment window. "Your mom's crying in the car. Lauren's pressing every buzzer in the building." I didn't look up from my laptop. It's been 4 days. Even the neighbors are starting to complain. My phone lit up with another text from Lauren. "You're destroying this family." Actually, a new voice said from the kitchen, "They're doing a great job of that all by themselves." It was Helen, my best friend and realtor. She walked over holding 4 cups of coffee. "The repo guys picked up Lauren's car this morning," she said with a grin. "I might have recorded it." "Show me," I said, reaching for her phone. The video played. Lauren was screaming while 3 quiet men hooked her red sports car to a tow truck. Mom tried to block the truck with her body. Dad waved papers at them, looking desperate. "Those papers," I said, watching closely. "Would you like me to continue rewriting the rest of the scene too?" I pointed at the papers. "Those are probably the loan documents they signed using my name without permission. I found out yesterday it's identity theft." Helen let out a long whistle. "That's not just karma anymore. That's a crime." The buzzer rang again. Lauren's voice came through the intercom. "I know you're in there. You can't ignore us forever. Watch me," I muttered. But Helen was already walking to the intercom. "Listen up, you spoiled brat," she snapped into the speaker. "Your sister isn't coming to save you anymore. Try getting a job instead of calling a lawyer. You'll need both." Scott nearly choked on his coffee. "Wow, Helen. Harsh, but true." She turned back to me. By the way, did you file those identity theft charges? I'm doing it tomorrow morning, I said, pulling up the files on my laptop. I had the documents ready, proof they used my name to get loans I never approved. The buzzer started again, this time nonstop. Now Mom's voice joined Lauren's, both of them talking over each other, begging. That's it, Helen said, grabbing her purse. I'm calling the police. This is harassment. Wait, I said, standing up. I'll handle it. I took the elevator down, heart pounding but step steady. When I reached the lobby, I saw Lauren's tear-streaked face pressed against the glass, with Mom behind her. Lauren rushed inside as soon as I opened the door. Do you even know what you've done? She cried. The bank froze everything. Dad might get charged with fraud. That's what happens when you forge loan documents, I said calmly. We didn't forge anything, Mom said quickly. We just used your name as a guarantor. You always helped us before. Always helped. I felt something snap inside me. You mean like when I was 14, waking up at 4 a.m. to tutor Lauren because you couldn't? Or when I worked 2 jobs in college while Lauren dropped out of 3 schools, using my money? That's not fair. Lauren stepped closer. You're just jealous. Jealous of what? I cut her off. That Mom and Dad love you more? They can keep their love. I'm done paying for it. Please, Mom said, grabbing my hand. We can fix this. Just tell the bank it was all a mistake. I pulled my hand away. Like when I was 11 and you took my birthday money from Grandma to pay for Lauren's dance lessons. Or last Christmas, when Dad borrowed my credit card so she could go on her spring break trip. That was different, Mom tried to explain. No, I said coldly. Those were practice runs. You've been testing my limits my whole life, seeing how much I'd give before I finally broke. Well, you did it. I'm done. Lauren's face fell. But you're my sister. You're supposed to protect me. I did protect you for 31 years, I said. I protected you from facing the real world. But not anymore. A police car pulled up outside. Helen stepped out of her car, right behind it. Miss, the officer said, walking toward me. We got a call about harassment, the police officer said. That's them, Helen pointed. They've been bothering my friend for days. Mom's face turned pale. Jacqueline, you wouldn't. I would, I said, stepping back into the building. And if you come here again, I'll add it to the identity theft charges I'm filing tomorrow. Identity theft. The officer's face turned serious. Ma'am, I need both of you to step away from the building. I watched through the lobby windows as the officer walked them to their car. Lauren looked back once, her face filled with anger and fear. Mom didn't look back at all. Upstairs, Scott and Helen were waiting with fresh coffee and worried looks. They're gone, I said as I dropped onto the couch. Maybe not forever, but at least for now. Helen sat next to me. You know what the best kind of revenge is? Living well. I guessed. Nope, she smiled. Buying that dream house you were saving for. Only bigger and better. And guess what? I just found one that fits your budget, now that you're not supporting 4 people. For the first time in days, I smiled. Show me. You won't believe this, Scott said. His laptop gave off a soft blue light across the kitchen table. While I was checking those old joint accounts, I found something. It was past midnight. We'd been going through financial records for hours. Empty takeout boxes were scattered on the table, proof of our little investigation session. Look at this, Scott said as I leaned over his shoulder. See these transfers? Every month for the past 4 years, small amounts of money have been moving from your savings into an account I've never seen before. That's not possible, I said. I watched my accounts carefully. They did it through that old joint account you opened with your mom in college, the one you forgot about. They've been using it like a hidden tunnel. His fingers flew over the keyboard. My phone buzzed, another message from Lauren. Dad's having chest pains because of you. Hope you're happy. Don't answer her, Scott said, still focused on screen. Wait, look at this. He pulled up a web of money transfers. The lines stretched out across the screen like a spider's web, showing cash moving from my accounts through different places and always ending up in Lauren's pocket or paying off my parents' credit cards. $400,000, Scott whispered. That's how much they've taken over the years. My head spun. I grabbed the counter to keep from falling. That can't be, I said. The numbers don't lie, he said, showing me more files. And there's something else. Your name is on Lauren's car loan. You're listed as a co-signer. I never signed anything, I said. Then we've got them. This is real fraud, Scott said, grabbing his phone. A sudden knock at the door made us both jump. I peeked through the peephole. It was Helen again, holding a large envelope. You need to see this, she said as she rushed in. I was checking the property records for that house. We looked it up, and guess what showed up? Helen said, your parents listed you as a guarantor on their condo refinance last week. What? I grabbed the papers from her. My signature was on them, but it was clearly forged. They're getting desperate, Scott said. The banks are closing in, and they're using your name to stay above water. Just then my phone rang. It was my boss, Justin, calling at midnight. Jacqueline. His voice was serious. Sorry for the late call, but there's something you need to know. Your sister applied for a job here. She used you as a reference, but her application has some problems. What kind of problems? She says she has a finance degree and 4 years of experience. She also wrote that you could confirm it. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. She dropped out after 1 semester. That's what I thought, Justin said, papers shuffling in the background. Jacqueline, with your position here, if she's lying, we need to handle it carefully. I sat up straighter. Justin, there's something I need to tell you about my family. 20 minutes later, I hung up. Scott and Helen looked at me, waiting. Well, Helen asked. Justin's reporting her for lying on the application, I said, sinking into the chair. And he gave me tomorrow off to file the police reports. Good, Scott said, spinning his laptop around. Because there's more. Remember that private school Lauren went to for senior year, the one that said they waived her tuition? I nodded. They didn't. Your parents used your name as a guarantor again. You've been paying for it through automatic withdrawals for the last 7 years. Anger surged through me. So, that's why they told me to keep the joint account open. They said it was just for emergencies. Yeah, Helen said, shaking her head. The emergency was their lifestyle, and Lauren being completely useless. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. Your father is in the ER. His blood pressure is dangerously high. Please, Jacqueline. If you ever loved us. Don't answer, Helen said, grabbing my phone. They're trying to pull you back in again. I know, I said, pacing. But what if he really is sick? Then that's their problem, Scott said firmly. They made their choices. For years. Another message popped up, this time from Lauren. If anything happens to Dad, it's your fault. I'll never forgive you. I took the phone from Helen and typed back quickly. If anything happens to Dad, it's because of the choices you all made, choices that now have real consequences. What are you going to do? Helen asked gently. I looked at the stack of documents on the table, proof of forged signatures, fake loans, and years of financial abuse. All laid out in black and white. I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago, I said, picking up my phone. I'm calling the police. Then I'm calling every bank they've lied to using my name. They're your family, Scott said quietly. No, I replied. They were. But real family doesn't do this. I'm calling now, I said, dialing. They're not just family, they're criminals who happen to share my DNA. And it's time they learned that karma wears a badge. The lights at the police station were bright and made everything look cold and too white. Detective Victoria laid out the documents on her desk, flipping through each page with raised eyebrows. This is a lot, she said, looking at me. You're saying this has been happening for years? I didn't realize how long until yesterday, I said, handing her another folder. These are the loan papers with my forged signature. I never signed any of them. And your parents and sister did this? She asked. Yes, I replied. My voice didn't shake this time. They used my name to get loans, open credit cards, and even co-signed a car. The detective made notes, her expression serious. "This is major fraud," she said. "Once we move forward with these charges, there's no turning back. Are you sure you want to do this?" My phone buzzed again. Another message from Lauren. "Dad's getting out of the hospital. No thanks to you. Mom's crying nonstop. How can you be so heartless?" I showed the text to the detective. "This is why I'm sure. They're still trying to guilt me." She nodded kindly. "Sadly, I see this more often than you'd think. Family financial abuse is very real." Just then, the door opened. My boss, Justin, walked in holding a thick manila envelope. "Sorry I'm late," he said, taking a seat. "But I brought something important." He laid out more papers on the detective's desk. Lauren's fake job application was just the beginning. There were job forms, school records, and loan applications, all using my name as a reference or cosigner, with fake details. "She's been applying to jobs all over the city," Justin explained. "She's been saying you'd confirm her fake experience and education. Some companies are already launching investigations." Detective Victoria's pen started moving faster. "These changes everything. We're now looking at multiple cases of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse." My phone rang again. It was Mom. The detective nodded. "Go ahead. Put it on speaker." I answered. "Jacqueline, please." Mom's voice sounded weak and scared. "The bank is threatening to press charges against your father. They're saying it's loan fraud. You have to help us." "I can't, Mom. Not anymore." "But we're family," she cried. "After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You mean stealing my identity, faking my signature, and draining my accounts?" "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "We just needed help, and you're so good with money." "Mrs. Mathau," the detective cut in, speaking clearly. "This is Detective Victoria from the Financial Crimes Unit," she said. "I suggest you stop talking and call a lawyer right away." The line went dead. "Well, that should give them something to think about," the detective said as she gathered the papers. "We'll begin processing everything now. With this much proof, we should have arrest warrants by morning." "Arrest warrants?" My stomach twisted. "They're actually going to be arrested?" "This is felony fraud," Justin said gently. "What did you think would happen?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed nonstop with messages from Lauren. "What did you do?" "The police are calling Mom and Dad." "I can't believe you'd betray us like this." "You're dead to me." The last message was a photo of us as kids, me helping Lauren with homework. We were both smiling. Under the photo, she wrote, "Remember when you were actually a good sister?" "This is what they do," I told Detective Victoria, holding up the phone. "Emotional guilt. They take, and when you stand up for yourself, they make you feel like you're the bad one. It's manipulation." She nodded. "Would you also like to press charges for harassment?" "Yes," I said, surprised by how sure I sounded. "Yes, I would." Justin gave my shoulder a light squeeze. "You're doing the right thing. They need to be held accountable." "I know," I said as I stood up and gathered my things. "I just wish it didn't hurt this much." "One more thing," Detective Victoria said as I reached the door. "Please save any future messages, texts, calls, emails. We'll need it for the case." "They won't stop, will they?" I asked. "Not until they're forced to," she said, handing me her card. "But that's what restraining orders are for." Outside the police station, the sun was rising. My phone buzzed again, one last text from Dad. "The police are here. How could you do this to your own parents?" I typed back, "The same way you did it to your daughter, one signature at a time." Then I blocked all their numbers. Justin stood waiting by his car to take me to work. "Ready?" he asked. I looked back at the police station. Detective Victoria was probably already preparing the paperwork. Soon, my family would learn that karma doesn't just knock, it can show up wearing a badge and carrying handcuffs. "Yeah," I said, getting into the car. "I'm ready." "They were arrested this morning," Helen said, dropping a local newspaper on my desk. The headline read, "Local family charged in identity theft case." I pushed the paper away. "I don't want to see it." "You need to," she insisted, flipping to the article. "They're already trying to twist the story. Your mom gave an interview saying you're mentally unstable and misunderstood what it means to support family. Classic narcissist move, Scott said, walking into my office. When caught, they try to make the victim look crazy. My office phone lit up again. Another call from an unknown number. They've been trying to get around your blocks all week, Helen said. Watch this. I put the phone on speaker. Hello, Jacqueline? It was my Aunt Christina. How could you do this to your own parents? They're heartbroken. Lauren's reputation is ruined. Their reputation? I kept my voice calm. You mean the one where they stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from me? Where they faked my signature? Where they committed serious crimes? They're family, she said. Family helps each other. Really? I said, flipping through papers on my desk. Because I got proof right here that they used your name too. Want me to tell you how much debt they put under your identity? The lines suddenly went dead. Boom! Helen grinned. That shut her up. My email pinged. A message from Detective Victoria. Subject: thought you should see this. Attached was a screenshot of Lauren's latest social media post. My sister destroyed our family because she's jealous of my success. Now she's trying to send our parents to jail. Please share our GoFundMe to help with legal costs. Oh, no, she didn't, Helen said, grabbing her phone. I'm reporting that fundraiser for fraud. Don't worry about it, Scott said while typing on his laptop. I already did. And I sent screenshots to the prosecutor. They're claiming they're broke in court while begging for money online. My desk phone rang again. It was Justin. Jacqueline, come to my office. There's something you need to see. When I got there, Justin had more papers spread across his desk. Your sister's been busy, he said. She tried to open credit cards at 7 different banks. She used your job title as proof, and when that didn't work, she used our company's name. She what? I said, shocked. It gets worse, he said, handing me a letter. She applied for a job at our biggest competitor. Said she was a junior analyst here, and used you as her reference again. I'll add it to the list of fraud charges, I said, grabbing my phone. No need, he said, smiling. I already did. He leaned back in his chair. But that's not the only reason I called you in. The board saw how you handled all of this, and they were impressed. They're offering you a promotion. Senior Risk Analyst. I blinked. What? You found fraud in your own family and had the strength to report it. That's the kind of honesty we need in risk management. Back in my office, Helen and Scott were waiting. Well, Helen asked, eyes wide. I got promoted. Yes, she cheered, hugging me. Told you karma works both ways. Just then my phone buzzed. It was an email from my parents' lawyer. Your parents are willing to take a plea deal, but they're asking if you'll write a letter to the judge asking for a lighter sentence. Delete it, Scott said right away. No, I said, already typing. Dear Mr. Gregory, my parents and sister committed financial fraud over many years. They stole my identity and took hundreds of thousands of dollars. They didn't show any regret until they were caught. Even now, they're trying to twist the story and make me the villain. I will not be writing a letter asking for a lighter sentence. Instead, I'll be sending a victim statement that explains every time they faked my signature, every dollar they stole, and every way they tried to ruin my name when I finally stood up for myself. They want to play games with the legal system? Fine, game on. Regards, Jacqueline. Savage, Helen whispered as she read over my shoulder. No, I said, hitting send. Just honest. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a message from Detective Victoria. Your parents' house just went into foreclosure. They're being evicted next week. I stared at the screen, thinking of all the Thursdays we spent in that house. Dinners, holidays, birthdays. All fake. All paid for with stolen money and lies. You okay? Scott asked gently. I will be, I said, looking out the office window. The city stretched out below me. Somewhere out there, my family was finally facing real consequences for the first time in their lives. You know what's funny? I said. They always called me the responsible one. The boring one. The one who had to help everyone else shine. And now, I'm the one with the promotion, the good credit, and a clear conscience. I turned back to my desk. They can keep their drama. I've got work to do. Speaking of work, Helen said, opening her tablet. "There's a house that just went up for sale. It's perfect for a newly promoted senior risk analyst." I smiled. "Show me." The courtroom felt smaller than I imagined. My parents sat at the defendant's table, looking tired and worn down in their formal clothes. Lauren slouched behind them in the gallery, glaring at me like she could burn holes through me. "All rise," the Jonathan said. Detective Victoria gently squeezed my hand as I stood. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded and held on to my victim impact statement, a 4-page letter that took me weeks to write. Every word held years of pain I had kept hidden. "The state versus April and Walter Matthau," the judge began. But before he could go further, there was noise at the courtroom door. My parents' lawyer rushed in and whispered something to them. Mom's face crumbled. Dad dropped his head. "Your Honor," their lawyer said, standing, "my clients wish to change their plea. They're pleading guilty to all charges." Lauren gasped from the back. "Mom? Dad?" "No." The judge looked at them over his glasses. "You understand this means there will be no trial, no chance to defend yourselves?" Dad nodded slowly. "We understand." "Very well," the judge said, shuffling some papers. "Before sentencing, we will hear the victim's statement. Miss Matthau." I walked to the front of the courtroom. My heels echoed on the marble floor. My hands shook a little, but I stood tall. "Your Honor," I began, "I've spent weeks trying to count the financial damage my family caused me. Every stolen dollar, every fake loan, every account they opened in my name. But the real cost, that's harder to measure." Mom started to cry. But I didn't stop. "How do you measure the pain of betrayal? How do you explain what it feels like to find out that every time your parents said, 'I love you,' what they really meant was, 'I love what I can take from you'?" "That's not true." Lauren suddenly stood up. "Miss," the judge said firmly, "sit down or be removed." I turned to face my family. "You always said family means giving up everything for each other. But that wasn't true. What you really taught me was that family means finding someone easy to take from, someone who won't fight back." "Jacqueline, please," Mom said, reaching out. "We can still fix this." "No, Mom," I said. "We can't. Because you're not sorry for what you did. You're just sorry you got caught." The judge cleared his throat. "Given the guilty plea and how serious these crimes are, I'm ready to give the sentence." "Wait," Dad stood up. "Your Honor, we did it for our daughter." "Which one?" I asked softly. "The one you took everything from or the one you gave everything to?" The judge slammed his gavel. "Mr. Matthau, sit down. Based on the seriousness and how long this went on, I sentence both of you to 6 years in state prison, with a chance for parole after 3. You must also pay back everything you stole." Lauren started crying loudly. "This is all your fault," she yelled at me. "I hate you." "Miss Matthau," the judge said, looking at her. "You have your own trial next week, for fraud and identity theft. Save your shouting for then." Outside the courtroom, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Helen and Scott stood close to me like bodyguards. "Miss Matthau, how does it feel sending your parents to prison?" one reporter asked. "I didn't send them anywhere," I said calmly. "Their own choices did." "Jacqueline," Mom called out as officers walked them past me. "We did all of this for you kids."
"No, Mom," I said.
"You did it to us." "That's not the same." Dad wouldn't even look at me. Lauren tried to rush at me, but their lawyer stopped her. "You're dead to me," she shouted.
"Funny," I said.
"Because I've never felt more alive." Detective Victoria walked over with a small security team. "Let's get you out of here," she said. "Your sister's getting a little unstable." In the parking lot, Scott opened the car door for me. "Want to grab a drink?" he asked. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and showing him an email. "I have a house closing to go to." Helen's face lit up. "The one we saw last week?" "That's the one," I smiled. "Looks like karma has good timing. My parents lose their house the same day I buy mine." "Jacqueline," Lauren's voice yelled from across the parking lot. She'd broken free from their lawyer. "You can't do this. Where are Mom and Dad supposed to live when they get out?" Not my problem, I called back. Try getting a job instead of asking for handouts. I heard Walmart's hiring. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The officers were putting my parents into the prison van. Lauren stood alone on the courthouse steps, crying and yelling into her phone, her mascara running. You okay? Scott asked softly. I thought about the house waiting for me.
The new job.
The freedom. You know what? I said, smiling. For the first time in my life, I really am. He smiled. We got a house closing to get to, ready to start your new life. I looked at the road ahead. It was wide and clear. More than ready, I said. Let's go home. Last box. Scott said, placing it in my new kitchen. Sunlight poured through the big windows, lighting up the granite counters I had fallen in love with during the tour. I still can't believe this is mine, I said, running my hand over the smooth surface. All mine. Better believe it. Helen cheered, walking in with a bottle of champagne. This calls for a celebration. First night in your new house. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Lauren's court sentence had just been announced. I clicked the link. Local woman gets 4 years for identity theft. Lauren Mathau, 25, was sentenced today for several counts of fraud. Don't, Helen said, gently taking my phone. This is your moment. No more family drama.
Just then, the doorbell rang.
It was Detective Victoria, holding a folder. Sorry to interrupt moving day, she said as she stepped inside.
But I thought you'd want to see this.
Your parents tried to file an appeal.
I sighed.
Of course they did. It was denied, she added, handing me the folder. Let me guess, they said they were only trying to help their kids? Actually, she said with a smirk, they blamed you. Claimed you gave them permission for everything. I laughed. Of course they did. The judge didn't believe a word of it, she said. Speaking of people making excuses, Scott called from across the room. You might want to see this. He had my laptop open and showed me a social media post from one of my cousins. Family isn't family anymore. Jacqueline put her parents in jail, and now she's living large in a fancy house bought with blood money. Karma's coming for her. Blood money. I laughed. They mean the money I managed to save, the money they didn't steal? Want me to reply? Helen said, cracking her knuckles in front of the keyboard. No need, I said, opening a box. Let them enjoy their drama. I've got better things to do. Like planning your housewarming party, Helen said, pulling out a design magazine. This place is perfect for entertaining. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Justin holding a bottle of wine. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said. I brought a housewarming gift and some news. Good or bad? I asked. He grinned. Depends. How do you feel about speaking at next month's Financial Security Conference? The board thinks your story could help people recognize financial abuse in families. I thought for a moment. There were so many people stuck in similar situations, feeling afraid, guilty, or trapped. I'll do it, I said. Someone has to show them there's a way out. Perfect, he said, handing me an envelope. Here's your new contract, with the raise we talked about. My phone buzzed again. It was an unknown number, but I recognized the prison's area code. Jacqueline. Mom's voice came through, weak and shaky. Please don't hang up. I need you to know. I'm sorry, Mom said. Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry because you got caught? Silence. That's what I thought, I said, keeping my voice calm. Goodbye, Mom. Wait, your father and I will have nowhere to go when we get out. Lauren can't help us. You're right. She can't. Because you taught her that it's easier to take than to work for something. I looked around at my new kitchen, where my friends were unpacking boxes and opening wine. But you taught me something too, I added. You taught me exactly who not to be. Then I ended the call before she could say anything else. You okay? Scott asked softly. Better than okay, I said, pulling wine glasses from a box. I'm free. To freedom, Helen said, raising her glass. And to karma finally doing its job, she added with a smile. Detective Victoria glanced at her phone. Speaking of karma, Lauren's being moved to state prison tomorrow. Want me to keep you updated? No, I said firmly. I don't need to know what happens to them anymore. Their story isn't my story. Then, what is your story? Scott asked, helping unpack the dishes. I looked around my kitchen. Sunlight was shining on the walls, my walls. My friends were beside me. I had a career I was proud of, one that valued honesty, not lies. My story, I smiled. It's just beginning. And this time, I'm the one writing it. Well then, Helen said, lifting her glass again. To new beginnings. And to Jacqueline, she added, the woman who proved that sometimes the best revenge is living well and keeping an eye on your bank accounts. Detective Victoria winked. We all laughed. The sound filled my home, my real home. A place built on truth, not lies. On strength, not guilt. On independence, not control. Outside, a truck passed by, carrying away my parents' repossessed furniture to be sold at auction. But I didn't look. I was too busy deciding where to hang my art, picking out paint colors, and making this space truly mine. They say home is where the heart is. But sometimes, home is where your heart is finally free. So, Helen said, opening her tablet. About that housewarming party. I grinned. Show me what you've got in mind. This time, every decision would be mine. Every choice would be clear. Every dollar would be earned. And it felt absolutely perfect. What do you mean Linda will own the company? I asked calmly, though my hands were tightly clenched under the table. The chandelier above gave off a warm light, but the mood in the room had suddenly gone cold. My father, Paul Thomas, the man whose company I had worked so hard to save, barely looked up from his plate as he cut into his steak. Jennifer, let's be honest, he said with a sigh, like he was talking to a child. You're good at the technical stuff, but leading people? That's not really your strength. We need someone who people look up to. Linda is the best choice. Linda, sitting across from me in her fancy dress, took a sip of her wine with a smug smile. She hadn't done a single thing to help when Paisley Bargain CTR was drowning in debt. But now, when the company was making record profits, she was being given everything. I created the software that saved this company, I said, my voice sharper now, cutting through the sound of clinking silverware. Without that, there wouldn't even be a company left for you to hand down. Dad laughed like what I said was a joke. Then he pulled out his wallet, took out a crumpled bill, and tossed it on the table. For your effort, he said. I stared at the $100 lying between my plate and my untouched glass of wine. $50. For the years I spent working late nights, coding until my eyes hurt. For all the sleepless weeks I spent studying our losses and designing the system that didn't just save us from bankruptcy, it made us leaders in the industry. I had turned Paisley Bargain CTR from a failing company into a $400 million success. And he gave me $50. Mom shifted in her seat, uncomfortable. She looked at me, but said nothing. No one did. I looked at my father, the man I'd admired all my life, the man I had worked so hard to make proud. And at that moment, I understood something clearly. It was never about how hard I worked. It was never about success or loyalty. It was always about control. I see, I said softly, quieter than I thought it would be. I picked up the $100 bill, looked at it for a moment, then folded it into my napkin. After that, I stood up. Jennifer, don't be so dramatic, Dad said, waving his hand like it was nothing. I gave a small smile. I'm not being dramatic. I'm just leaving. It's clear that in this family, I'm just a side character. So I'll step out of the scene. Linda let out a small laugh, clearly amused. Jennifer, Mom started, but I was already walking out of the dining room, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell or ask for fairness. I just left. The next morning I got to work early, like always. The office looked very different from a year ago. Back then, things were falling apart, people whispering about losing their jobs, managers quitting before the whole company crashed. Now, things were booming. The software I built had changed the entire logistics industry. Tasks that once took weeks could now be done in minutes. We had expanded worldwide and signed deals with top clients. But something felt strange that day. As I walked through the lobby, I noticed people giving each other nervous looks. Conversations stopped when I passed by. When I reached my office, the door was already open. My desk was cleared out. My computer was gone. Even the nameplate that once said Jennifer Thomas, CTO, was missing. Sitting in my chair, flipping through papers like she owned the place, was Linda. She looked up and gave me a bright, fake smile. "Oh, good morning, Jennifer. Didn't Dad tell you? I'll be using this office now. You'll report to me." My stomach sank, but I didn't let it show. "What's my new job?" I asked calmly. Linda tilted her head like she was thinking. Then she shrugged. "We'll figure something out. Maybe something in IT support." IT support? In the company I saved. She gave a smirk. "Dad actually thinks you should take a break. Relax a little. Maybe work on some hobby projects. But don't worry, you'll still be part of the company in some way." I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding in my chest. After everything I had done, after all the long nights, hard work, and ideas that kept this company alive, they still wanted me gone. Like I didn't matter. Like I was only worth $100. I looked at my sister, then at the company logo on the glass wall outside my office. Paisley Bargain Center. That name used to mean family, loyalty, and legacy. Now it only meant betrayal. But I didn't argue. I didn't try to defend myself. I just nodded. "I understand." Then I turned around and walked out. They thought they had won. They thought I'd leave quietly and disappear. They had no idea what I was about to do. I walked out with my head held high and my heartbeat steady. They thought they had crushed me, that I would take whatever leftovers they gave me, maybe even beg to stay. But as I stepped into the elevator and the doors closed, one thought burned in my mind. Watch me. The first thing I did was disappear, but not completely. I still came to work the next day, still sat at the small desk they gave me in the far back corner, next to interns who didn't even know who I was. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I watched. And in less than a week, I saw the truth. Linda was completely lost. She had no idea how to run a company, especially one that had just grown into a multi-million-dollar business. She spent her days in endless meetings, making decisions based on feelings instead of real facts. When department heads tried to give advice, she pushed them out and replaced them with her friends, people who only knew how to match wine with cheese, not run a company. Paisley Bargain's CTR wasn't just weak. It was falling apart again. And they were destroying everything I had built. That's when I made my choice. If they didn't want me at Paisley Bargain CTR, I'd build something even better. One evening, after most people had gone home, I sat in a coffee shop with 3 of the smartest people I had ever worked with. There was Timothy, our former CFO, the man who had balanced the budget when the company was drowning in debt. He knew every financial trick in the book. Patricia, the best data analyst in the business. She had built our customer tracking system from the ground up. And Eric, our lead engineer, the only person who understood my software as well as I did. I did remember, because we had built most of that software together at 4 a.m., living off coffee and stress. All 3 of them had quietly quit in the past month. They weren't fools. They saw what was coming. "Jennifer," Timothy said, leaning in with a serious look. "What's the plan?" I looked at them, then pulled out a folder. Inside was everything I had been working on in secret. "We're building something new," I said calmly. I didn't have to convince them. They were ready. There was one important thing Linda and my father had missed. Yes, the original software was under Paisley Bargain CTR name. Technically, they owned it. But I had written the first version of the code before I ever used it at the company. And the newest version, the one with the most powerful features, I had never uploaded it to their servers. It still belonged to me. For the next month, I worked quietly. I made the software even better, stronger, faster, smarter. Then I pitched it. But not to Paisley Bargain CTR, to their competitors. In just 4 weeks, I had 3 offers. By the end of the month, I signed a deal. A $100 million contract. Just like that, I wasn't just in competition with Paisley Bargain CTR, I was on the path to take them down completely. The first sign of trouble at my father's company came quietly. A client who had been with them for over 11 years suddenly canceled their contract. Then another. And another. Linda panicked. She started yelling, firing employees, blaming everyone but herself. But the truth was simple. The industry had moved forward. The newest version of my software, the one I had improved, was now being used by their competitors. Paisley Bargain CTR was outdated, and I was just getting started. 7 months later, the moment finally came. I was sitting in a beautiful hotel ballroom, sipping champagne, as the final speaker ended their talk. It was the Tech Innovators Gala, one of the biggest events of the year. CEOs, investors, and top executives from all over the world were there. This year, I was the guest of honor. When they announced my name, I stood up and walked onto the stage, my heels clicking on the shiny floor. Tonight, we honor those who are shaping the future of technology, the host said. Jennifer Thomas, the creator of the most advanced logistics software in the market, has changed how global companies run their operations. Her company, Nova Systems, is now worth over $1,000 million. The crowd clapped loudly. But as I looked out into the audience, my eyes landed on two familiar faces, my father and Linda, sitting in the back. Their company was once again close to shutting down, and they both knew it. I smiled, not to get revenge, not to hurt them. I smiled because I had finally built something of my own. I had finally learned the lesson they tried so hard to teach me. I didn't need their approval. I had won in my own way. And this time, there was nothing they could do to stop me. It had been exactly 1 year since that painful dinner. 1 year since my father threw a crumpled $100 bill on the table and told me I wasn't good enough. 1 year since my sister smiled smugly, knowing she was being handed something she didn't earn. 1 year since I quietly walked away, only to come back and win everything. Now, as I sat at the head of the Nova Systems conference table, going over our latest report, I couldn't help but smile. Revenue, $640 million. Market share, 65% and still growing. Paisley Bargain CTR was falling apart. I had slowly taken away every advantage they once had. Their clients had left. Their stock had dropped. And just a week ago, a leaked financial report confirmed the truth. They were about to collapse. Then what I knew would happen finally did. At exactly 10 a.m., my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Jennifer, your father and sister are here to see you. I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. It's time. Send them in. They walked in quietly, like shadows of their old selves. Linda wore her usual fancy clothes, but even that couldn't hide the tired look in her eyes. My father, who was always confident and in control, looked older and defeated. They had lost. And they knew it. Jennifer, my father said, trying to sound calm, we need to talk. I pointed to the chairs in front of me. They paused, probably realizing that for the first time they were walking into my space. But they sat. Linda shifted in her seat, tapping her nails on the armrest. She couldn't even look me in the eyes. Dad sighed. Look, we've had our differences.
But we're still family.
Paisley Bargain CTR is in trouble. We need your help. There it was. I let the silence grow longer. I watched them get more uncomfortable. Finally, I spoke. And what exactly do you want me to do? Dad leaned in a little. We're offering you a leadership role. Something important. I admit, we may have judged you too quickly. I tilted my head. You realize that now? Linda finally looked up. Her face was tight with stress. Jennifer, don't be petty. We need you, okay? I laughed. Really laughed. You need me? I said, repeating her words. That's funny because a year ago, you told me I wasn't good enough to lead anything. You said, Dad once told me I was only good for technical work. And now, he had the nerve to look annoyed. You know how business works, he said. Decisions were made. But now we need to move forward. If you come back, we can rebuild Paisley Bargain CTR together. There it was again, control. They didn't actually want me. They wanted to own me. And what position are you offering me? I asked, pretending to be curious. Dad sat up straight, like he was about to make some big deal. You'd be second in command. Right under Linda. I blinked. Then I laughed again, louder this time. Linda's face turned red. Jennifer, grow up. You created some software, fine. But that doesn't mean you know how to run a company like we do. I stopped laughing. I leaned forward, placed my arms on the desk, and spoke with a voice cold as ice. Linda, I said quietly, my company is worth $1,000 million. Yours is about to go bankrupt in a few weeks. Tell me again, which one of us doesn't know how to run a company? Silence. Pure, perfect silence. Dad cleared his throat. Jennifer, please. That word, please. The same man who once belittled me, who tossed money at me like I was nothing, was now begging. And I had never felt more calm. No, I said. Linda's eyes widened. Excuse me? I said no. I repeated. I don't need Paisley Bargain Center. You needed me, and you threw me away. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. Dad let out a sharp breath. He was clearly getting upset. You're really going to let your own family fail? I didn't let anything happen, I replied smoothly. You destroyed the company the moment you put Linda in charge. Linda pushed her chair back and stood up, her face burning red. You're just bitter, she said sharply. You've always been jealous of me. I smiled, slow and amused. Jealous. I repeated. Linda, I don't need to be jealous. I already have everything you wanted. I stood up too, brushing down my blouse. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a real company to run. My father left without saying a word, his face tight with anger. Linda stormed out, but just before she reached the doors, she turned back. I hope you're happy, Jennifer. I met her eyes, calm as ever. I am. She didn't say another word. The doors closed behind her. I sat back down and let out a long breath. They had walked in thinking they could throw a few empty apologies at me and that I'd come running back to fix their mess. They had no idea who I had become. But now, for the first time in my life, I was free. I didn't hide the fact that I enjoyed watching them squirm. But I knew this wasn't the end. Paisley Bargain's CTR was sinking fast. And when a ship goes down, it drags everything and everyone down with it. The only question was, would I let that happen? 5 days later, the news broke. Paisley Bargain CTR had officially declared bankruptcy. It was everywhere: business magazines, online forums, even national news. Former industry giant Paisley Bargain CTR collapses overnight. Poor leadership decisions sink $600 million company. How greed and family drama destroyed Paisley Bargain CTR. And the best part? Every article gave me credit for the company's earlier success. They all said the same thing. Paisley Bargain CTR only survived its first crisis because of the software I had created. And once I left, it was only a matter of time before it all fell apart. I was in a meeting when my assistant, Barbara, knocked on my office door. Jennifer, you'll want to see this, she said, handing me a printed report. I skimmed through it. By the time I reached the last paragraph, a small smirk formed on my lips. Paisley Bargain CTR was being liquidated. Everything was being sold, the headquarters, the remaining assets, even the Thomas name itself. Dad had made desperate choices. He borrowed too much, trying to save the company. And now the banks were taking everything. And the best part? I could buy it all. It felt like perfect, poetic justice. That evening, I sat in my penthouse apartment, looking out over the city lights. I thought about everything I had been through, how hard I had worked just to be seen, to prove myself to the very people who never believed in me. I had already won. Did I really need to go further? Then I remembered that night 1 year ago when my father tossed a crumpled $100 bill on the table like I was some waitress he barely respected. And just like that, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I made my move. I didn't use an investment firm. I didn't hide behind a third party. I wanted them to know exactly who was taking everything. So I called the bankruptcy attorney myself. I'd like to place a direct bid on all of Paisley Bargain CTR assets, I said, including the name. There was a pause. The attorney seemed surprised. Miss Thomas, do you understand what that means? I smiled. I understand perfectly. A week later, I was sitting in the very same boardroom my father used to rule, like a king. Only this time, I was the one in charge. The papers were spread out in front of me, with a sleek black and gold pen resting on top of the final contract. With one signature, Paisley Bargain CTR would belong to me. The empire my father built, the one he never let me lead, was now mine. Linda and Dad sat across from me, both looking pale and tense. Dad looked like he had aged 11 years in just a week. Linda wouldn't even look at me. "I still can't believe you're doing this," she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. Doing what? Buying a failed company? Taking over a name that doesn't mean much anymore? She frowned. "You know what I mean." I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers on the polished table. "That's funny," I said. "A year ago, you didn't think I could lead a company. And now, you think I have too much power?" Dad let out a frustrated breath. "Jennifer, just sign the damn papers." I picked up the pen, paused, then slowly slid the contract back across the table. Dad blinked. Linda frowned. "What's this?" Dad asked. "A counteroffer," I said. He picked up the papers and started reading the first page. His eyes went wide. "You're dissolving Paisley Bargain CTR?" Linda gasped. "You're shutting it down?" I smiled. "That's right." My father looked like he might explode. "Why would you do that?" I leaned forward, calm and steady. "Because I never needed Paisley Bargain Center. But I do want one thing." I pointed to a line on the last page. Dad followed my finger and froze. Linda snatched the paper and read it out loud, her voice shaking. "All remaining rights to the Thomas name, patents, and intellectual property will be absorbed by Nova Systems and permanently retired." She looked up at me, furious. "You're not just buying it, you're erasing it." I looked her straight in the eye. Yes. Paisley Bargain CTR would no longer exist. The name would never be used again. The company would never come back. It would simply be gone, just like they tried to erase me. Dad clenched his jaw. "You're just doing this to get back at us." "No," I said. "I'm doing this because some things need to end." I picked up the pen again. This time I signed. And just like that, it was over. The Thomas era was finished. In its place, Nova Systems rose higher than ever. With no competition for my father's failed business, we grew fast, signing major contracts that once belonged to them. Their legacy was erased. Mine was just beginning. 4 months later, I received a letter. No return address, just a plain envelope with a handwritten note inside. It said only one word: Jennifer. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll understand. Dad." I stared at the note for a long time. Then I threw it into the fireplace. As the flames burned the last piece of Paisley Bargain CTR, I smiled. Because now I had finally and completely won. It had been 4 months since I shut down Paisley Bargain CTR forever. For months since I signed the papers that made sure the name would never come back. For months since my father and sister walked out of that boardroom with nothing. And for the first time since all this began, I felt peace. Nova Systems was thriving. Without any competition from my father's company, we had grown fast, taking over every big client that once made him proud. Revenue: $1,000 million. Market share: 75%. Status: #1 leader in the industry. But it wasn't the numbers that made me proud. What meant the most was walking through my office each morning and seeing a company built on talent, not family connections. People were hired because of what they could do, not because of their last name. This was a company I had built. On my own. Without needing anyone's approval. But no matter how far you move forward, the past has a way of showing up again. Especially when I got the invitation. It came in a plain envelope, a cream-colored card with shiny gold letters. The Thomas Family Annual Gala. I had almost forgotten about it. Every year, for as long as I could remember, my parents threw this huge event. It used to be the biggest night in the industry, back when they still had power. But this year, it wasn't my father hosting. Someone else had taken over. Someone who bought their mansion at auction after the bankruptcy. The invitation was probably sent by mistake. Whoever was running it now clearly didn't know the full story. Still, I didn't throw it away. I made a choice. I was going to the gala, not to show off. not to get revenge, but to finally close this chapter for good. That night, I arrived wearing a custom black gown, stepping out of my car with calm, quiet confidence. I had nothing to prove. The event was just as fancy as I remembered. Shiny chandeliers, soft music, and rich guests holding champagne like they still ruled the world. But this time, I was the most powerful person in the room. And they all knew it. I could hear the whispers as I walked in. Is that Jennifer Thomas? No. She runs Nova Systems now. Didn't she bring down her father's company? I ignored them.
I wasn't there for them.
I came for one reason. I saw them, my father and sister. They weren't in the spotlight anymore. No important people were standing around them. No big business talks. Instead, they were off to the side, like a shadow of who they used to be. My father looked smaller than I remembered. The strong presence he once had was gone. And for the first time, I saw something in him I'd never seen before: regret. Linda still stood tall, trying to act confident, but I could see through it. Her fingers were tight around her champagne glass. Her eyes kept glancing at me, then quickly looking away. For the first time ever, I was the one in control. And they both knew it. I walked toward them, the sound of my heels echoing on the floor. Linda froze. My father turned to look at me, and for a moment, I saw something in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It wasn't resentment. It was defeat. "Jennifer," he said softly. I had never heard his voice so quiet. I tilted my head. "Dad." The silence between us felt long. Then he sighed. "I guess this is when you rub it in." I gave a small smile.
No, Dad.
"This is when I say goodbye." Linda blinked. "What?" "I didn't come here to brag," I said. "I didn't come to remind you of what you lost. That's not my concern anymore." I set my drink on a tray as a waiter passed and looked into my father's eyes one last time. "For years, I tried so hard to make you proud, to show you I was enough." I took a slow breath. "But I don't need that anymore." I turned to Linda. "And I don't hate you. I never did. I just feel sorry for you." Her face tensed. "Because, unlike you, I didn't need to take power from someone else. I built my own." Her lips parted, like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. For the first time, she was speechless. I looked at both of them one last time. Then I walked away. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted revenge, but because for the first time in my life, I was free. I left the gala without looking back. I didn't need to prove anything anymore, because this was never about revenge. It was about becoming the person I was meant to be. And as I got into my car, heading back to my company, my future, and the life I had built with my own hands, I smiled. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning.